Chapter 1036. The Royalists and the Tensei faction were able to put aside their former enmity and discuss important matters together. They gathered together under the great banner of General Sun and protested righteously against the Emperor's random order. It was truly moving. These were all true warriors, much better than the coquettish cheese who cheated the scepter. History would remember them. The people would remember them. The sky, the earth, the imperial city. At this moment, everything would record this greatness and record that these people did the right thing at this time and place. It definitely would. I mean, if they couldn't remember, then General Sun would help a little and make the warriors famous. Because a famous spider spirit once said that the higher the martial arts, the greater the responsibility. General Shansei had the best martial arts in the world, and he had powerful internal energy that shocked both ancient and modern times. His cultivation was so strong that he could even cover the entire imperial city with sound transmission from 1,000 miles away. Since that was the case, he had the responsibility of broadcasting in real time. Because the people had the right to know the truth, the affairs of the imperial court had to be open and transparent. Therefore, the impassioned sound waves shook the entire sky. Welcome Mr. Zhang Sun Wuji to the team of Friends of Justice. He expressed his firm opposition to His Majesty's hasty and random order. Empress Tensei is both talented and handsome, and his merits and abilities are above all the other princes. Why can't he be the crown prince? Lord One is also here. Congratulations to Lord One for taking over the gate of heaven. He said that unless His Majesty takes back the random order and talks about the crown prince, he will kneel outside the palace until he dies. He even carried a coffin here. This Lord is also here. This Lord whose name can't be spoken. Even His Majesty has to be wary of him. Could it be that the storm of the crown prince has already caused such a far-reaching impact? Ma Shuring at the side handed over the name list. It was basically the same as the dwarf's book of hatred. There were many names written on it, and they were all people who had conflicts with Sun Lang or were about to have conflicts with Sun Lang. In short, they were all people who were worthy of turning enemies into friends. Sun Lang picked the ones that were pleasing to his eyes and read them out loud. At this moment, he had transformed into the most loyal brother in the university dormitory. He used all kinds of postures and tones to point out a path for his good friends. After all, it was such a grand event and a great opportunity to gain reputation. How could he forget about his friends? His inner energy was extremely high, already in the realm of endless growth and growth. His vigorous, genuine chi sent his righteous voice to every corner of the capital, broadcasting the grand occasion outside the gate of heaven influence in real time. In the various government offices in the capital, as well as the mansions of the various magnates, there were sounds of spitting and cursing one after another. Everyone's reactions were basically the same. At first, he thought, that guy went too? Can't sit still anymore. Hiss, why did this old man get involved? What happened? Also, wow, why is everyone heading over there? Should we go and take a look too? Finally, huh? Why'd I go too? He suddenly came to his senses, stomped his feet, and cursed, worrying about personal gains and losses. Lord One smashed the teacup in his hand. He flew into a rage. You bastard, heartless man. How dare you impersonate me and slander me? When did I go to the gate of heaven influence? When did I carry a coffin? Rumor. The people sitting below were all his colleagues and students. They were all filled with righteous indignation. Someone said angrily, "You're not a son?" Sun Lang's actions will definitely incur public anger. Once his rumor is exposed, he will definitely lose face. As a first-class official of the imperial court, how dare he distort the truth? Someone else shouted, "Lord Ming, let's go and expose his rumor." When Quan Fu smashed his teacup and cursed a few times, his expression became more and more sinister. He said coldly, "Expose? This 1,000 miles telepathy technique covers the entire capital and is unfathomable. Do you have this kind of skill? Do I have this kind of skill? Even if you want to scold him, can you scold him?" The person who made the suggestion was rebuffed and did not dare to say anything. He thought angrily, damn it, if I had that kind of skill, would I still be here waiting for you? When Quan Fu said coldly, good plan, good plan. He said that I went. If I didn't go, he would turn around and say that I was fishing for fame, cowardice, and desertion. If I jumped out and explained that I didn't go, he would ask me why I didn't step forward. No matter what, he's right. As a general of the imperial court, this brat is using the unreasonable methods of a street hooligan. He's a disgrace to the educated and a laughingstock. Everyone nodded in agreement. They also disdained Sun Lang's despicable tricks and criticized him in their hearts. However, his method is indeed effective. Do you have a way to defeat the enemy? When Quan Fu glanced at the people below, he stroked his beard and said coldly, His Majesty's appointment of the Crown Prince is indeed rushed. However, Sun Lang must have ulterior motives for coming out in such a hurry. He talked nonsense and implicated all his colleagues in the imperial court in order to strengthen his momentum and gain benefits. Another person advised, so, Lord Ming, we shouldn't act rashly. Sun Lang wants to wrestle with His Majesty. If we go, we will fall into his trap and become his accomplices. His Majesty will see this and be unhappy. So, even if it would damage his reputation, he could not go. That was what he meant. When Quan Fu glanced at him and slowly shook his head. At such a time of crisis, His Majesty needs officials who can share his burden, not officials who only know how to protect themselves. If we hide in our mansions and let Sun Lang jump up and down outside the imperial city, His Majesty will be even more unhappy if he knows that we can't do anything. So we must go. His gaze was stern as he said, Sun Lang is using such despicable means to stir up trouble and profit from it. As sincere gentlemen and loyal subjects, we must thwart his scheme. Everyone was moved by his passion and loyalty. They all knelt down and were willing to go with Lord Ming. When Quan Fu said coldly, Don't be fooled by Sun Lang jumping up and down happily. By doing this, he is pushing himself into the teeth of the storm and giving His Majesty an excuse, an opportunity to deal with him. He wants to gain benefits from a fire. I will add a few more pieces of firewood for him to make the fire burn brighter. The door of the one family mansion opened, and a group of people left in a mighty manner. In various parts of the imperial city, officials of all levels thought about it, and many of them also set off. Outside the gate of heaven influence, it gradually became lively. General Shansei was still shouting over there. The appointment of the Crown Prince is not only an important matter outside the imperial court, but also an internal affair of the imperial family. Now that His Majesty is making a mess, where is the imperial clan court? Where are the princes? Someone come. Why aren't you going to invite the Empress, the first prince, the other princes, and the other princes here? The old man who had brought people to kneel outside the imperial city was stunned by Sun Lang's series of actions. He could not help but admire and marvel at the godly player. At this moment, he suddenly shuddered and did not care about kneeling anymore. He directly rushed over and grabbed Sun Lang. What are you doing? Sun Lang blinked and smiled. I'm trying to trick you. Trick your head. The old man was flustered and exasperated. Gathering all the officials, the imperial family, and the relatives outside the palace for a meeting. Do you want to preside over the meeting yourself? What position do you have in the emperor? Sun Lang smiled. I was also inspired by you. The old man pointed at Sun Lang with trembling fingers and could not say a word. He was like Wang Situ, who had been verbally abused in front of two armies. His Majesty will not believe you. Sun Lang yawned. I don't expect him to believe me either. While they were arguing, a few more groups of people arrived. They looked at Sun Lang with unfriendly gazes. They were obviously the officials who had been called by Sun Lang and were forced to participate in the protest. One could imagine the feeling in their hearts. Sun Lang cupped his hands and bowed to them. He laughed and said, Gentlemen, why are you so late? He acted as if nothing had happened. The most shameless person in the world was none other than him. These people were all on the book of hatred. They were not on good terms with Sun Lang, or there was a natural conflict between their standpoints. In short, they were the type who would fight even if they did not offend him. Some of them looked at Sun Lang and sneered. Some of them stared fiercely at General Shinsei. Some of them looked on coldly, wanting to see what medicine this brat was selling in his gourd. More and more people gathered here. Officials were constantly arriving. Their ranks were also getting higher and higher. Some of them had been called by Sun Lang and were disgusted, but they had no choice but to come. Another group had heard that so many officials were participating in the meeting. They followed the principle that the law could not punish the masses and came over to follow the trend. There was also a group of people who came to see what Sun Lang was selling. The atmosphere outside the Gate of Heaven influence became more and more strange. Originally, the emperor had abruptly appointed the crown prince. He didn't discuss with the martial arts hall, didn't recommend outside the imperial court, and didn't even communicate with the inner palace and the royal clan. Instead, he directly threw out the imperial edict to appoint the eldest prince as the crown prince. Such an action was undoubtedly earth-shaking to the huge and traditional Hota kingdom. Even the first-rank officials in the imperial court were shocked by this news. Everyone couldn't figure out the emperor's plan and couldn't figure out the emperor's plan. Just when they were dumbfounded, the brave divine strategy general jumped out to stir up trouble. Of course, he had to roar and support the emperor. With this master as the vanguard to go against the emperor, everyone could watch from the back and figure out what was going on. It was naturally excellent that someone was leading the charge. Sun Lang cupped his hands and bowed to the crowd, but everyone avoided him and rarely came up to greet him. He observed the crowd for a moment and tilted his head to ask, "Who from the royal family is here?" Yin Song and the others looked around and shook their heads. There is no one from the Tensei province. No one from the crown prince's side came either. There is no one from the other princes or the royal family. Sun Lang smiled and said, "Let Zhongshuan Zai enter." Everyone understood and passed the message down. A moment later, there was a commotion from the back. King Zhongshan, who had not been seen for a long time, walked over with his sword in hand and a stern expression. The surrounding guards cleared a path for him as he walked over. There was a low murmur in the crowd. During the battle for the crown prince's position, the Tensei province had closed its doors to all guests. The crown prince had shrunk his head and refused to come out. The royal family in the capital, whether they were idle rice worms or nobles with real power, were all nowhere to be seen. At such a crucial and delicate moment, King Zhongshuan, as the emperor's crown prince, actually dared to appear in such an occasion. King Zhongshuan walked all the way to Sun Lang and bowed. "Greetings, Grand General." Sun Lang smiled and helped him up. Patting his arm, he said with a gratified smile, "When His Majesty chose the crown prince, the royal family kept quiet. Empress Tensei, as the pillar of the nation, shut his doors and refused to come out. The crown prince played it safe and made a fortune in silence. Everyone else pretended to be deaf and mute, deceiving themselves and others. Only you stepped forward bravely. This is the responsibility of a member of the royal family." King Zhongshuan said softly, "Marshal, you praise me too much. You once said that as long as it is something beneficial to the nation, one should step forward and do it. This humble prince is merely carrying out your teachings." The two looked at each other and laughed. The acting was very convincing. Only their eyes revealed their true intentions and thoughts. King Zhongshuan's eyes flickered with pleasure, viciousness, and a little bit of ambition. He had been utterly defeated by Sun Lang in Summer Province, and after returning to the capital in a sorry state, he had been reprimanded and abandoned by his father. The so-called atonement for his crimes through meritorious service was nothing more than recycling trash. He had long been abandoned. After understanding this, his heart was filled with hatred and murderous intent. He longed for revenge, wanted to take revenge on everything. So he was willing to cooperate with Sun Lang and even work for him. He wanted to see the two people he hated taste the pain and despair he had experienced. Just like now, the emperor's choice of the crown prince signified that Empress Tensei's ambitions and schemes had been shattered. King Zhongshuan could faintly sense that his proud sister seemed to have lost his father's favor. This was truly wonderful, but there was something even more wonderful. As a prince, he had his own ambitions, especially since Empress Tensei had not given birth to a son, The royal family had no legitimate son. Then the matter of the crown prince, whether to choose the elder or the virtuous, could be fought over. He also had this ambition, and he also had a little hope. If I cooperate with Sun Lang, listen to his orders, be at his beck and call, perhaps I can obtain even more things. Not only revenge, but perhaps something I once dreamed of. With this thought, King Zhongshan's smile grew even more humble and friendly. He was not daydreaming. The emperor's choice of the crown prince signified that Empress had lost his chance. This was undoubtedly in Sun Lang's interest. He could simply sit on the sidelines and watch the court fight, watch Empress slowly lose power, and then seize the opportunity to strike decisively and seize even more benefits for himself. He could have done so, but he had jumped out. This meant that he did not like the crown prince, nor did he want the crown prince to be emperor. Since that was the case, wasn't it obvious who would be the crown prince? As long as I am obedient and cooperative enough, someone would have to be emperor. King Zhongshan felt his heartbeat quicken. He saw an opportunity. Just then, amidst the clamor, the palace gates opened. An unfamiliar eunuch, surrounded by imperial guards, walked out and sternly said, "His Majesty has spoken. All of you ministers are to gather outside the gate of heaven influence and shout at the imperial city. Do you want to rebel?" Normally, when these words were spoken, the ministers would kneel on the ground and shout, "This humble subject dares not," and so on. But this time, the leader was General Shinsei, a strange man who did not walk the usual path. Chapter 10:37. The eunuch in this room had just picked up his tone. "Do you want to rebel?" This sentence was even more twisted, full of majesty and power. Eunuchs were the best people in the world at borrowing the majesty of the tiger. Their status was low, and they were only servants of the emperor. Moreover, they were missing a part of their body, which was not tolerated by the eyes of the world. Therefore, they were extremely inferior. Especially the civil and military officials who serve in the court, because of their status, never looked them in the eye. They had resentment in their hearts, but had nowhere to vent it, so they were always very angry. The only way to vent their anger was to do shady business like passing down imperial edicts, because that was acting on behalf of the emperor's authority. Through their own mouths, they conveyed the will of the emperor. At that moment, the power of the imperial power was projected from their bodies, affecting the people high up in the air. Those important people who were usually insufferably arrogant had to obediently kneel down, trembling with fear, without their usual arrogance. It was only at this time that the eunuchs felt comfortable and relieved. Even if you were usually arrogant, in front of the imperial power, didn't you have to kneel down like the miscellaneous people? This was probably the mentality. Humans were always hurting each other. Just like now, this eunuch was acting on behalf of the emperor's edict, going out of the palace gate to berate the officials. His heart was trembling, and he was very excited, because very soon, these high-ranking officials outside would all kneel down and tremble with fear. Because for an official, "Do you want to rebel?" was already the highest level of questioning and denial. This was questioning the ultimate character of an official. He was already impatient, but the expected kneeling and shouting in fear did not happen. The officials outside the palace subconsciously turned their heads and looked at one person. Then a thunderous roar exploded in this place. "Bullshit!" The sound wave roared out like a tiger's roar, setting off a gust of wind that blew toward the palace people who were on guard. "Did the emperor ask you to come out just to say this kind of nonsense?" The eunuch opened his mouth wide. This was different from script. Before he could come back to his senses, he heard the voice continue to roar. "Rebel? We have performed meritorious service in Tianyuan, guarding the country and experiencing countless bloody battles to protect the Leaf family. Today, we are not doing this for personal gain, but for the common good of the world and the country. We have gathered outside the gate of heaven-bearing, disregarding our personal honor and disgrace, and urged His Majesty to think thrice before acting. We only requested to meet with His Majesty so that he could discuss the important matters of the country." Who would have thought that His Majesty would make all sorts of excuses and would even send a servant to berate the ministers of the country and casually give them the order of rebellion, which has chilled the hearts of our brothers. The eunuchs who worked in the palace either flattered and fawned in front of the emperor or their superiors, or bullied their colleagues and subordinates in all kinds of ways. They had never seen such a reasonable and imposing mouth cannon. This was the loss of being uncultured. The eunuch opened his mouth and said, "How? How dare you?" The Shinsei general was seething with anger. "Son of a b****, you still dare to be so arrogant in front of me. I'll king kill you." He raised his hand. The invisible chi energy was like a dragon's roar. The abundant, murderous intent pulled the longbow fully. Right at this moment, behind him, Shan Xiongxin and Lu Haida pounced forward together. Each of them pulled the general's arm and shouted, "Marshal, calm down. Marshal, calm down. It's not worth getting angry over this eunuch." The eunuch had just faced Sun Lang directly, and even if only a tenth of the terrifying, murderous intent forged in the bloody battle in the great desolate mountain was revealed, it was already too heavy for his little friend's life to bear. He was so shocked that his face turned pale and his legs trembled. He even felt an urge to pee and muttered, "Rebel, rebel." He was just about to scream for the Imperial Guards to protect him and retreat, but who knew that the opposite side would shout again. The Shinsei general broke free from the two well-intentioned passers-by and shouted while holding his chest, "I'm in so much pain. Wholeheartedly for the country. I courageously remonstrated with the emperor, disregarding personal honor and disgrace, and I didn't expect that I would end up like this." His Majesty didn't care and sent a eunuch out, saying that I, Sun Lang, want to rebel. Rebel. This is a rebellion. My colleagues, pat your conscience and tell me, do I, Sun Lang, look like someone who wants to rebel? The eunuch was stunned. How could you be more wrong than me? Sun Lang was heartbroken, and he beat his chest and stamped his feet. Fine, fine, I shouldn't have come back. Now that the world is at peace, His Majesty doesn't need us martial artists anymore. Tinyuan's turbulence has disappeared, so it's better to go back, Since His Majesty suspects that I want to rebel, then I'll resign from all my positions in military power and retire to my hometown. I won't care about worldly affairs, and I'll play with my grandchildren and enjoy the rest of my life with my wives. The ministers present were stunned at first, and then they were so angry that they almost laughed out loud. How long has it been since you returned to the capital? What position and military power do you have? Resign my ass. At this moment, King Zhongxun appeared, and he cried out, full of grief and anger. You mustn't. General, the Empire can't do without you." Sun Lang sighed and said in a bleak voice, "No, forgetting heroes is a trait of a great country. Our time has passed, and us old fellows shouldn't stay in the court and annoy His Majesty. We should leave as soon as possible, lest we be labeled as rebels." The other generals also looked sad, and Pongji said loudly, "Marshal, please reconsider. If you leave, the conscience of the court will be gone. There will be no justice or justice in the court." Bullshit. Sun Lang went missing for 2 years. So what's the meaning of this, Pongji, huh? Android, on the other hand, shook his head like a lion, looking at the conflicted ministers and roaring, "My colleagues, the general wants to retire. Aren't you going to persuade him? Don't tell me you want the marshal to resign. Do you have the heart to let the marshal charge into the enemy lines himself?" Chapter 1038. Li Jiansheng was under a lot of pressure. If there was a job more difficult than being a prince, it would be the first prince. If there was a job more difficult than being a prince, it would be the crown prince. If there was a job more difficult than being a prince, it would be the soon-to-be first prince. This morning, when his capable aide and childhood friend, Wei Ting, barged into his room and dragged him out of his bed without any regard for etiquette, he was furious. When Wei Ting told him the news, he was even more furious. Is today April Fool's Day? However, when Wang Ge, Pei Ju, Xue Wan Che, and the others swarmed over, their expressions uncertain, Li Jianxing finally understood. Today really was April Fool's Day. His father had played a big joke on him. A prince who didn't want to be the crown prince wasn't a good prince. Furthermore, Empress didn't have a legitimate son. According to the customs of the ancient empire, the eldest son should be chosen. In other words, he had the greatest hope. That was how it should have been. But there was a problem. His father was an ambitious and ruthless person who didn't play by the rules. His thoughts were deep and his temperament was tough. He didn't care about external things and had his own ideas about everything. He was an emperor with a strong desire for control. This kind of mighty ruler protected the country and governed the country. He boasted that he was a wise ruler. Even if he was choosing a successor, he would definitely choose the one he liked the most. Why would he care about the nonsense of choosing an elder instead of a virtuous one? Thus, the position of crown prince had always been empty. Even during the most dangerous period of the Great War of Tianyuan, there were ministers who wrote petitions to establish a crown prince for the sake of the country to calm the people. However, the emperor vetoed these petitions and used the most politically correct reason. The rise and fall of the world depended on this war. If they failed, then they would be destroyed. Establishing a crown prince would only make people relax. If they couldn't defeat the sky demon, then they would be the last emperor of the empire. They would lose the country, let down the people, and let down their ancestors. These words were too eloquent. All the ministers were forced to shut their mouths. Even the princes were moved to tears. Yes, if they couldn't defeat the sky demon, then the emperor was prepared to bear the crime of being the ruler of a fallen country. He didn't want his children to bear this pain. A father's love was like a mountain. A father's love was like a mountain. Do you dare to move? He didn't dare to move. He had to be touched. When the battle was won, the sky demon was destroyed, and the emperor won the battle. His name would shine in the annals of history. It would not be arrogant to say that he was the emperor of the ages. His reputation, power, and dignity had all reached the peak, and his imperial power had expanded like never before. The ministers were also on guard against the emperor weakening their authority, so no one took the initiative to mention the matter of the crown prince. After all, the sky demon was dead, and the emperor was in his prime, so it was fine to ignore it for now. Therefore, 2 years after the grand victory of the Heaven's Origin sector, the position of crown prince was still vacant. Everyone was trying to guess His Majesty's intentions. The consensus was that His Majesty was still hesitating and choosing. The reason why the first prince was not chosen as the crown prince was because there were better candidates. This candidate's talent, reputation, and achievements were so dazzling. Not only did she offset the great prince's advantage as the eldest son, she also made up for her disadvantage as a woman. Empress Tensei, a woman, a general of the Heaven's Origin sector, a princess of the imperial family, also wanted to be the emperor. Other than Empress, there were other outstanding princes. Although they were not as dazzling as Empress, they were still capable, and each had their own advantages. A prince who did not want to be the crown prince was not a good prince. In front of the throne, who could be indifferent? Everyone wanted to fight for it, and everyone felt that they had hope, because everyone thought that with their father, the emperor, as a strong ruler, the one who would become the emperor in the end might not be the most outstanding of his children, but the one he thought was the most suitable, the one who could inherit his political legacy, carry on his will, and make him feel at ease. Therefore, the great prince had never given up hope. Over the past 2 years, he had been building up his own reputation, staying away from power, and paying attention to the people's livelihood. From time to time, he would flatter his father, appearing harmless but responsible. He had set a very clear position for himself, a docile and well-behaved person who would preserve his achievements. Because countless examples in history had shown that only obedient, gentle, and even cautious heirs were the most favored by powerful rulers. He had always played this role and was very well behaved. He knew that his talent was limited. Not only could he not compare to the world-famous Empress Tensei, he could not even compare to his brothers. But it did not matter. His father was in the prime of his life and would not appoint a crown prince for the time being. He had been working hard. Over time, his father would be able to see his cleverness and goodness. Perhaps he could really get what he wanted. Thus, in the recent days, the court had been in constant turmoil. Sun Lang had been jumping up and down, but he had remained silent. After the incident in Summerzhou broke out, his trusted aide Pei Ju had been the first to jump out and say that he could get in touch with him. After all, the two of them had a common enemy and could work together to kill Empress first. In the Great Prince's eyes, this was, without a doubt, a bad idea. His position was that of a well-behaved child. How could he run over and conspire with his father's enemy to cause trouble? Silently making a fortune was the best thing to do. He had adopted the most conservative way of fighting. He had always believed that staying alive was more important. He had to be the demon to the end. If fate was on his side, then wouldn't he have won without doing anything? Indeed, he had won without doing anything. The emperor wanted to appoint him as crown prince. The surprise had come too suddenly. Up until now, Li Jiansheng still had not reacted. His face was filled with confusion. How did I win? How did I win? Why did I win? He had not yet woken up from his great confusion when he was forced to face the trouble before him. This was because his strategists were quarreling. The emperor had suddenly appointed a crown prince. This was extremely sudden. There were many factions in the royal court, and they all had different interests. Most of them had their own princes, and most of them had their own investments. Everyone was happily buying stocks. Suddenly, the emperor stood out to buy leeks. Did he want everyone to go to heaven? The various elders in the capital did not have the refined interest of taking over the country's stocks. Once the news of the appointment of a crown prince spread, the capital was bound to be in turmoil. There were disputes in the royal court, clamoring among the 6 ministries, and turbulent undercurrents. A huge political storm was about to arrive. According to the information sent back by spies, there were already iron-headed officials who had run to the gate of heaven influence to knock on the emperor's door. It could be imagined that the great prince, who was about to become the crown prince, would become the target of public criticism. He would have to bear countless criticisms and malice. Exactly how to deal with this was the core topic of everyone's quarrel. Closing the door and refusing to come out, hiding like a turtle, this is the worst strategy. Pei Ju said sternly, "His Majesty has appointed your Highness as the crown prince. Now that the officials are knocking on the door, the various ministries are discussing, and all kinds of criticism are directed at your Majesty. Your Highness, as the son of the emperor and about to become the crown prince, should step forward bravely, whether for the sake of filial piety or responsibility. Who else but your Highness can become a crown prince?" The great prince was slightly moved. Indeed, he was about to become the crown prince. He had to be a little more forceful. Wang Gui shook his head. "That's not right. That's not right. The royal court quarreled because of your Majesty's appointment of a crown prince. Honestly speaking, it is indeed too hasty. There was no discussion with the outside court. It is only natural that the officials in the royal court would criticize you. They are not opposing your Highness, but they are opposing your Majesty's hasty decision. If your Highness jumps out at this time, it will give the officials the impression that you are arrogant and greedy for power. Once you become the crown prince, you will forget everything else. Therefore, in my opinion, it is better to wait and see for now." Thus, Jiansheng hesitated again. Wang Gui's words seemed to make sense. If he were to be overbearing and lose the impression of others, the officials would definitely be very unhappy. In the future, he might not be able to live comfortably as the crown prince. Pei Ju retorted, "You want to curry favor with both sides? You are dreaming. The crown prince was appointed by His Majesty. Your Highness can only stand on His Majesty's side. As long as you gain His Majesty's favor, even if the officials have any criticisms, His Majesty will shoulder them. If your Highness hides in your home like a coward, His Majesty will be suspected of being afraid of trouble. His Majesty will be disappointed." "Good, that seems to make sense. Father has appointed me as the crown prince. I cannot disappoint him." Wang Gui continued, "That's not right. His Majesty is wise and wise. He naturally knows that your Highness is gentle and magnanimous. If your Highness doesn't say anything, His Majesty must have expected it. If you jump out at this time, His Majesty will most likely think that your Highness is too greedy for power and that you were just acting before. Crown Prince Jinxing's gaze became sorrowful. He shifted his attention away from the two think tanks and looked at his other trusted aides. The others were also arguing. It seemed that what they said made sense, but they all had their own shortcomings. If you offend the officials, His Majesty will protect you. If you offend His Majesty, you can't even be the Crown Prince anymore. With His Majesty's protection, can the Crown Prince's position be stable? Tensei Province hasn't made any moves. They have also shut their doors and refused to come out. Of course, Empress has to shut her doors and not come out. She's not the Crown Prince. You must be firm. Those disloyal officials are knocking on the door and begging for orders. They want nothing more than to force His Majesty to retract his order. His Majesty must be under a lot of pressure. If Your Highness shows your stance now and convinces the officials, then this matter will be set in stone. If His Majesty is forced to retract his order, not only will the Crown Prince's position be gone, Your Highness will also not have a day of peace in the future. We will all die without a burial place. After listening for a while, Li Jinsheng felt his head swell with dizziness and extreme vexation. This was simply the most difficult problem in the world. Moreover, this matter was truly too important. It was related to the ownership of the throne and his life. The slightest mistake would cause him to die without a burial ground. Even he himself was hesitant and unable to make a decision. Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly heard another voice. Does everyone not feel that this matter is a little strange? There is no lack of outstanding individuals among the princes and princesses. Empress Tensei is like the bright moon in the sky, her achievements above all her brothers, and she is deeply favored by the emperor. In truth, Empress is the most popular candidate for Crown Prince. Why did His Majesty suddenly change the Crown Prince candidate after she entered the palace last night? Everyone should know what happened in the Stellar Sword Palace last night, right? Jinxing's heart suddenly sank. This voice had hit the nail on the head. As the first prince, he actually had an inferiority complex because he had a super awesome and super capable younger sister. Moreover, he also had many equally outstanding younger brothers. He knew his own limitations and felt that his talent was not top-notch. His greatest advantage was his status as the first prince. For example, in the battle for the position of Crown Prince, he had already made up his mind to work hard and was prepared to fight for a long time. How can a meat pie fall so quickly and accurately? The thought of his scheming father made him feel a little weak. The voice continued, His Majesty's actions are far too illogical. What if there is a conspiracy hidden within? For example, if the first prince is just a chess piece that His Majesty pushed out to divert attention, and he's the kind that will be thrown away once he's finished using him, then what should we do? Don't be so dismissive. Deposing the Crown Prince isn't a serious matter. Since he dared to risk public anger and push the first prince onto the throne, what's wrong with finding a reason to do so? In any case, the first prince's foundation isn't too deep, and everyone in the court has their own investments. Deposing the Crown Prince is a good way to fight for it. Everyone can't be happier. The clamor gradually died down, and everyone's faces became pensive. They were all intelligent people, but they had been blinded by the benefits before them. The position of Crown Prince was a meritorious service to the emperor. Once His Highness ascended to the throne, everyone present would soar to the heavens. What a big cake. But now that everyone had calmed down, they naturally realized that something was wrong. Yes, just what was His Majesty thinking? But very quickly, they realized that something was even more wrong. Pei Ju and the others looked at the crowd. Everyone had a contemplative look on their faces. After that person's reminder, everyone sank into deep thought. But the most important question was, who was the person who had reminded them? The first prince reacted slowly. Hearing that person's silence, he asked in a daze, "What's the plan?" That voice laughed and said, "Why don't you ask the mysterious Mr. Sunlang?" Those with slow reactions hadn't recovered from their shock, but Pei Ju and the others heard a thunderous roar in their ears. They all shouted in unison, "Sunlang!" Sunlang poked his head out from behind the pillar, waved his hand, and said hi. After the news of the Crown Prince's appointment had spread, The first prince's manor had closed its doors to all guests. The exterior was loose, but the interior was tight. It was already at the highest state of alert. All the guards, and even the kamikaze, came out, surrounding the manor so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. This was to prevent someone from doing something desperate. But this guy had still managed to sneak in. No one even knew when he had arrived. This made Peju and the others break out in a cold sweat. With the level of alert in the manor, they couldn't even detect this person's infiltration. What if he wanted to do something? The first prince blinked and finally recognized who the person in front of him was. He screamed and jumped up. Covering his eyes, he turned and ran. "I don't want to see you. I've never seen you before. Hurry up and leave." As a person who was quick to plan and slow to react, there were some things that he couldn't figure out. For example, he didn't know if he should close the door and not come out. He didn't know which action was in the best interest of his father. He didn't know which action would gain his father's favor. But there were some things that didn't need to be thought about to be understood. For example, if his father knew that less than 2 hours after he was appointed as the crown prince, a certain general of divine strategies, whose name must not be revealed, secretly visited his residence and left with him after a pleasant conversation, then he would be King done for. What is this brat doing here? Chapter 1039. His Majesty appointed the crown prince. The great prince was dumbstruck. The aides and staff were in a heated argument. While everybody stuck to their own opinion, refusing to yield to each other, the miraculous Mr. Sun Lang descended from the sky. And then the great prince was so scared that he hugged his head and ran away. Shameful, really shameful. No matter what, he was going to be the crown prince. If nothing went wrong, he would become the future master of this empire. Yet when he saw the warlords and ruffians who threatened the country and suppressed the imperial family, he was so scared that he hugged his head and ran away like a rat. It was really too unsightly. The crown prince's aides and subordinates all felt somewhat embarrassed. The military officers, one after another, stood in front of the crown prince to protect him. The civil officials sold their mouths. They could not show weakness even more. Peju immediately took a step forward and sternly said, "The Grand Shinsei General, have you only done some sneaky, uninvited shady business?" Sun Lang chuckled and said, "And this gentleman is?" Peju coldly said, "One Zhou's Pei Hongda." General Shinsei was shocked at first, and then he acted as if he had heard the crown prince's great name for a long time and was fortunate enough to meet him today. "You are Shiji Xuan? Then who the F***ck was he?" Peju had heard of Sun Lang's great name for a long time, especially knowing that this man liked to talk dirty. If he did not understand, he must not delve too deeply into it. Besides, the most important thing right now was that Sun Lang came uninvited. Quickly driving this servant out was the right thing to do. As if he was driving away a chicken, he said, "General Shinsei came rashly. It is inappropriate. Right now, the wind and clouds of the imperial court are changing. His Highness is at the heart of the struggle. We cannot receive you. Please do as you please." Sun Lang laughed and said, "I am an ignorant mountain man, an unbearably vulgar country bumpkin. I do not know the etiquette." "Shameless scoundrel," Peju sternly said. "General Shinsei is an important minister of the imperial court. You must have honor and shame." Sun Lang was so happy that he laughed out loud. "I'll let the evil Stone King know that I have a face as thick as a city wall. I can see the world's laughter, anger, and ridicule as a breeze in my ears. I also have peerless martial prowess. I can get rid of all the stupid idiots. With these two, why would I still need shame?" These words were very reasonable and left people speechless. Moreover, this person was able to freely enter and exit the heavily guarded prince's mansion and even appear behind the pillar without anyone noticing. This was simply the best explanation of peerless martial strength. Peju was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He felt like a scholar who couldn't reason with a soldier. He had seen shameless and lazy people before, but this was the first time he had met someone who was so lazy in a high position. Also, who the F***ck is the evil Stone King? Ju was just about to say something when he heard Sun Lang say with a smile, "Since I'm already here, aren't you guys curious about the purpose of this trip?" "Yes, we are not curious at all. What we want most is for you to get out of here smoothly." This was the common thought of almost everyone in the hall. They weren't stupid. Naturally, they knew that His Majesty and Sun Lang were like fire and water. Not to mention in this situation, even in normal times, they didn't want to have anything to do with Sun Lang. However, before they could object, Sun Lang was already minding his own business and continued, "Of course you're curious. So, since you asked so sincerely, I'll be merciful and tell you. Who the F***CK asked you? You shameless person?" Everyone cursed in their hearts. However, at this moment, the cold Senrin's murderous aura suddenly descended. General Shunsei, who had been smiling all this time, suddenly exploded with a shocking murderous aura. The terrifying murderous aura played an eerie, soul-summoning song. Countless formless cold cyclones continuously spread out. The sharpness of a peerless martial artist dominated everything. Sun Lang smiled evilly and said, "His Majesty has appointed the crown prince, and Tensei has fallen out of favor. At this time of chaos, if I kill everyone in your residence and frame Tensei province, wouldn't it be a win-win situation?" The first prince had just calmed down. In any case, he didn't want to weaken the crown prince's momentum in front of Sun Lang. Just as he was about to put on airs, he heard Sun Lang say such words. He immediately quivered and almost fainted. Frightened and angry, he screamed, "Protect the Emperor! Protect the Emperor!" Most of the first prince's aides and subordinates were trained in martial arts and knew what was good for them. When Sun Lang's murderous aura swept over them, they were all shocked. Their instincts and intuition as martial artists allowed them to determine the absolute difference in combat strength. However, when they heard Sun Lang's murderous aura, they couldn't help but be shocked and angry. "How dare you?" They forcibly gathered their internal energy and held their weapons, ready to fight with all their might. It wasn't just for loyalty, but also for their own lives. Even if the opponent's cultivation was terrifying, they were martial artists who had cultivated martial arts for their entire lives. How could they stretch out their necks and wait to be killed? However, at this moment, General Shen's murderous aura suddenly dissipated, as if the ghostly Sunran murderous aura from before was just an illusion. Sun Lang smiled and said, "Of course, this is a bad plan. Damn it, damn it." Everyone didn't know what to say. The fear, murderous intent, and courage in their hearts were mixed together. They had just raised their resolve to kill the enemy and serve His Highness, and they had also made up their minds to find a way to spread Sun Lang's evil schemes and evil deeds so that he wouldn't be able to get away with it. Then, you King tell me this? The situation became very awkward. Everyone was even somewhat at a loss of what to do. Disregard everything and continue to fight with Sun Lang? Damn it, they were going to die. The first prince was about to become the crown prince, and everyone was about to achieve meteoric success. Everyone's value would multiply, and their potential would be limitless. They were about to be rich and powerful, but at this moment, they took the initiative to fight with Sun Lang and stretched out their heads for him to chop, just to die together with him. Only a fool would do that, but it was so King infuriating. This bastard. Everyone looked at Sun Lang with even more unfriendly eyes. They wanted to tell this bastard to scram, but they were also afraid that he would do the same thing again or do something shocking again. It was really a headache. The first prince felt even more humiliated. He was the eldest son of the imperial family, a member of the imperial family. Although there were capable officials and generals in the imperial court who didn't treat him with respect. Today, his father had appointed him as the crown prince, and the position of the Eastern Palace was right in front of him. Before he could celebrate, this traitor had descended from the sky and struck him with a stick. "I'm the crown prince. Ah, crown prince. Can't you show me some respect?" He finally experienced his father's feelings for once. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices, but there was nothing he could do about it. Under the protection of his loyal subordinates, the first prince closed his eyes, hiding the cold light in them. He had already developed a murderous intent. A lawless person like Sun Lang couldn't be allowed to live. His father's decision was right. This kind of person was already beyond the control of the emperor and would not be tolerated by the emperor. Wait until I have power. Wait until I have power. But now, what should I do? The first prince, who was always scheming, naturally felt troubled. In reality, Pei Zhu and Wang Gui also couldn't make up their minds. Sun Lang was fierce and unrestrained, like a child who had grasped peerless power. His behavior and inner thoughts were unfathomable, not to mention planning and dealing with him. They were racking their brains to think about information related to Sun Lang, analyzing Sun Lang's intentions. At this moment, Sun Lang took the initiative to speak again. Do you all want to know my middle and best plans? His smile was as bright and kind as before. However, everyone's mood had subtly changed. As long as he didn't want to kill or commit arson, there was no harm in listening. At least it was better than him causing a ruckus here. No. Pei Zhu suddenly realized that something was wrong. His Majesty had appointed the first prince as the heir. No matter what his intentions were, the first prince had to stand with His Majesty. His Majesty wanted to kill Sun Lang, and the first prince had to fight to the death with Sun Lang. Today, Sun Lang had come uninvited. The first prince should firmly draw a line between himself and Sun Lang and express his sincerity and determination to His Majesty. Even if he had to resort to violence and fight, he couldn't back down even half a step. At most, he would be swept by Sun Lang and suffer some physical pain. Could it be that Sun Lang really dared to risk universal condemnation and kill the first prince under such circumstances? He didn't dare. That was why he had decided to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. He had used his murderous aura to frighten everyone and make them fearful of his ferocious might, so that they would not have the time to think about his background. Then, he would be free to play his tricks. With this thought, Pei Zhu said sternly, "Your Highness, please make a decision. This is a crucial moment. Your Highness cannot meet with the general in private. Please give the order to gather the troops and invite the general out of the residence." The first prince understood Pei Zhu's gaze. He wasn't stupid, and he had known Pei Zhu for a long time. He could guess his thoughts and plans. As he hesitated, Wang Gui also spoke. "Your Highness, you must not. The general is a pillar of the country and a first-rank military officer. How can you use force and force people out for no reason? Not only will it chill the hearts of the soldiers, but it will also show that your Highness has a guilty conscience. A ruler should have an empty heart, be magnanimous, and have a clear conscience. Who can criticize you?" As a childhood playmate, the first prince also understood Wang Gui's meaning. Under these circumstances, it was unwise to fall out with Sun Lang. After all, he was already here, and his methods are brilliant. His previous words were only a joke, but there was one thing that was true. He and Empress Tensei were already at daggers drawn. The first prince becoming the heir would only benefit him. Now that the imperial court was in chaos, the ministers were arguing with each other, and there were even ministers who were begging for orders. Under these circumstances, if he could have a powerful ally to support him, then the matter of becoming the heir would be as stable as Mount Tai. After all, Sun Lang's strength was obvious to all. Ever since he returned to the capital, he had never been at a disadvantage in his battles with the emperor. Even if he couldn't win over this kind of person, he couldn't offend him. After all, this kind of shameless but strong guy was hard to say. Whether or not he could succeed was another matter, but it was too easy for him to ruin other people's plans. Pei Zhu glared at Wang Gui, flattering and appeasing people, asking a tiger for its skin. Wang Gui also stubbornly retorted, reckless and impetuous, disregarding everything. Oh, why is it always like this? Can't the two of you think alike? The first prince almost broke down, and everyone else was speechless. Sun Lang's troops were already at the city gates, but the two great think tanks on their side still hadn't reached a consensus. What was going on? Sun Lang said slowly, "Since all of you want to know, then let's talk about the best plan." Peiju said angrily, moving your lips, bewitching people, and harboring evil intentions. What exactly are you trying to do? Sun Lang said happily, Evil King, you're finally curious. Peiju said furiously, I am Pei Hongda from Wenzhou. That's all. Where did this messy nickname come from? Sun Lang nodded and said, all right, don't be angry. I'll get straight to the point, okay? The best plan is that I can help the first prince gain a foothold and secure his position as the crown prince. How about it? This time, the two think tanks were finally on the same page. Peiju sneered. Would you be so kind? Wang Gui said in a low voice. What is the general planning? Although the first prince was a bit soft-hearted, he still knew how to act tough. Jinqing admits that he has little talent and knowledge, and does not have much virtue. Today, he has received Imperial Father's favor, and it is the Emperor's boundless kindness that I cannot repay even if I die. In other words, if you want me to cooperate with you to mess with my father, don't even think about it. Sun Lang gave him a coquettish look and said reproachfully, You mischievous little brat, don't you feel ashamed saying such things? You're going to be the crown prince, so be honest. Who in this world doesn't know that the crown prince's greatest wish is for Imperial Father to die quickly, and the Emperor's greatest fear is that the crown prince can't wait? Today, you've become the crown prince, which is equivalent to climbing a mountain of swords. Your brothers and sisters see you as a thorn in their side, and your Imperial Father sees you as a thorn in his side. That was the logic, but who would say it out loud? Peiju said angrily, How dare you? How dare you drive a wedge between the royal family? Sun Lang picked his nose and said, You have a mouth, the court has a way to speak, the officials have brains, and the Emperor has ears. If you have the ability, go report me in front of the Emperor. What are you talking about here for? You don't have the guts to cut me. Peiju was deflated again and was very angry. When an official reached Sun Lang's rank, many crimes had already disappeared. Unless the Emperor had made up his mind, united the battle lines, completed the exchange of interests, and prepared to make a move against General Shunsei, then all the crimes would become crimes. Otherwise, even if Sun Lang greeted the Li family's ancestors, or even slapped the first prince twice, the court would probably pretend not to see. Sun Lang smiled and said to the first prince, My heart is with the moon, but the moon shines on the ditch. I'm here to save your life. What I told you before, don't you think about it carefully. Why did the Emperor suddenly make you the crown prince? Don't you think this position of crown prince came too easily? The first prince's heart trembled, but he still said, Father makes arbitrary decisions. No matter what considerations he has, as a son, I can only follow. Are you sure? I'm sure. Really? Really? You won't regret it? Peiju saw Sun Lang's threat and said warily, What do you want to do? Sun Lang showed a strange smile. You all heard my broadcast earlier? Everyone looked at each other. Sun Lang showed a sad expression and said in a low voice, General Shunsei, who was disheartened and decided to retire and return to his hometown, still couldn't let go of the country. He knew that he couldn't change the Emperor's decision with his own power. His patriotic heart and burning obsession still drove him to do one last thing. He wanted to see with his own eyes the Emperor's strong successor, to see if Prince Jinqing's shoulders could carry the entire world. He was disappointed. He was given the cold shoulder, and everyone treated him coldly. For these people who were about to soar, an old man who had offended the Emperor and was about to retire had no value. General Shunsei was deeply hurt by Prince Jinqing's weakness and cowardice. He was disappointed, helpless, and sad. He could only slowly leave this sad place. His confused eyes looked around the unfamiliar kingdom. His lonely heart searched for the last hope. He looked at Tensei province. Prince Jinqing, whose face was getting darker and darker, couldn't sit still. What do you want to do? Chapter 1040. The first prince could no longer sit still. In the Tianyuan War, the royal family had priority. In that war that concerned the survival of the country, trash had no chance of survival. The battlefield was the best stage to prove oneself. and the royal family members all stepped onto the battlefield. The sons of the emperor were naturally no exception. They were a country that revered martial arts, and they were in the middle of a war that concerned the survival of their race. Under these circumstances, the heir to the empire could not be a coward who hid in the back and trembled in fear. Whether or not a prince could establish achievements on the battlefield was the best evidence to determine whether or not he was qualified to be the crown prince, or even the emperor. Thus, the princes began to compete. With the sky demon as their enemy, they used military achievements to prove themselves. The winner would definitely win the favor of their father and the praise of the officials, and become the crown prince. At least, that was what the princes thought. Then, something awkward happened. One of the contestants left everyone in the dust, crazily accumulating military achievements. This person was a princess. Yes, among the members of the royal family. The one who was the best at fighting was actually a princess. This was no longer a question of shame. This was a psychological shadow. For a long time, the Heavenly Strategies princess had been like someone else's child and had stolen too much of their imperial father's favor and praise. This was especially so after she expressed the attitude of, "Who says a woman can't be the next empress?" The alarm bells in the hearts of the princes rang for a long time. "You're too arrogant, old sister." The so-called brotherly affection gradually faded and was replaced by fear and vigilance. For a long time, in the hearts of the princes, little sister was their strongest competitor and imaginary enemy. They knew very well that if their little sister was a man, then there would be no suspense about the position of crown prince. For a long time, they both valued and feared this little sister of theirs. Even this morning, when the first prince heard that he had one, the first thing he thought of after his ecstasy and surprise subsided was how to weaken Empress's influence and power. After all, this younger sister of his was giving everyone too much pressure. She held military power in her hands, had a resounding reputation in the imperial court, and was very popular among the people. Any qualified ruler would view such a person as a mortal danger and must find ways to suppress her. And now, Sun Lang's attitude of, since there's nothing to talk about, I'll just have to look for my old flame, sure, it just happened to poke at the first prince's biggest weakness. To the princes, Sun Lang was already an old acquaintance. During the Tianyuan War a few years ago, everyone had paid special attention to this rising general in the army. This was because this grandson of the Ronghua family from the summer province's Jinling was very close to their younger sister Shirer. Closeness meant political leanings, which represented a huge threat. There was detailed information that showed that after Jia Ying fled to Empress's side, General Tensei's behavior and ability to handle matters had undergone a positive change. Everyone had enough reason to believe that this change was related to the son of the Ronghua family in Jinling. Jia Ying was like Empress's brain, giving her ideas and advice. In a short 2 years, Tensei Province's power had been integrated and sublimated, and its influence in the imperial court and the military had greatly increased. If he was just a brain, then it would be fine. However, Jia Ying himself was also a terrifying martial artist and an unparalleled commander. He had made outstanding contributions on the battlefield, and his fame was even above the emperor's concubines. Such a terrifying fellow actually had goodwill and even love for the emperor's concubine. How the hell were they going to play with this? At that time, the princes were very frightened and even wanted to secretly plot against Jia Ying. But there were discerning people among the prince's advisors who saw the crux of the matter at a glance. Jia Ying's close relationship with Empress was not a bad thing, but a great thing because Jia Ying was really too awesome. So much so that when the two of them were together, they could even directly shake the emperor's authority and rule. So, why did they want to set up a trap? I have to shout 666. I have to sincerely wish these two people well. I have to look at Jia Ying with admiration for my brother-in-law. I have to show him kindness, and I have to ask His Majesty for a marriage between the two of them. Of course, this wishful thinking didn't work out. Later on, the incident at Dahuang Mountain happened. Empress waved her sword to cut off the threads of love, killed her husband to prove her Tao, and proved her determination and loyalty to the emperor. Her decisiveness in killing was unparalleled, and all the princes were scared out of their wits. From then on, they were even more afraid. As a result, when Sun Lang came back to the capital alive and kicking after more than 2 years, the princes didn't say anything, but they were very happy in their hearts. "You two cunning bastards, one big and one small. At that time, it was great to kick you when you crossed the river, but now you're going to the crematorium." But Sun Lang actually said such words now. The fear of being suppressed by Jia Ying and his sister that year surfaced in his heart again. The great prince's heart trembled, but he was still skeptical. After all, the incident at Dahuang Mountain was right there, and the two of them had already turned into enemies. What? Now they still want to get back together. He stared and said, "What is the general going to do in Tensei province?" Sun Lang rolled his eyes at him. "Why do you care? Even your father can't control me. Who talks to the crown prince like this? I'm already the crown prince, crown prince." Beside him, Pei Ju saw the great prince's panic. He was a supporter of Sun Lang's threat theory and believed that he absolutely couldn't work with this fellow, so he laughed coldly and said, "Your Highness, let him go." As everyone knows, the Shunsei and Tensei are like fire and water, and Empress has lost power. What he wants to do most is to step on her and make sure that she will never be able to make a comeback. Why would he go and reconnect with her and let Empress make a comeback? Sun Lang smiled and nodded. Yes, yes, yes. The king of evil is right. That's how it is. He didn't argue or refute and was extremely calm. It made people feel that he was unfathomable. Sun Lang raised his hands in salute to the great prince and smiled. "Goodbye, hidden crown prince." What kind of crown prince was the hidden crown prince? General Shansei left as soon as he said he was leaving. Before anyone could react, he pushed open the door of the hall and walked out. The elite soldiers in charge of patrolling suddenly saw an unknown short-haired person walk out of the main hall. They couldn't help but be stunned. Then, as expected, they were teased by the general. "Keek." Sun Lang laughed strangely. "Go and collect your crown prince's corpse." Fuck. At first, the guards on the outside the corridor on the roof were stunned. Then, their expressions gradually became frightened. They looked like they had eaten 3 mouthfuls of *T and a mouthful of yellow urine to aid digestion. Today, their crown prince had just been appointed as the crown prince. Everyone in the residence had hope of rising to the top. Everyone's fighting spirit was unprecedentedly high. On one hand, they were vigilant of all movements, and on the other hand, they were fantasizing about their meteoric rise in the future. Then, you Astor's king, tell me this? It was like betting on Russia to beat Saudi Arabia 5-0 before the start of the World Cup. Only after the game was over did they realize that their bet had failed. Some of the people with weaker mental fortitude showed a dumbfounded expression on the spot. Another person scrambled into the room to check. More people reacted neither quickly nor slowly. They looked at Sun Lang with eyes full of hatred and anger. They raised their weapons and roared. Ignoring everything, they madly charged at Sun Lang. In the blink of an eye, the guards of the crown prince were all experts in martial arts. Their minds were like lightning, and their movements were extremely fast. In an instant, layers of figures charged at Sun Lang with endless sorrow and fury. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled sounds rang out like rain hitting a banana leaf. The people charging at Sun Lang were sent flying outwards at an extremely fast speed. At the center, General Shinsei grabbed 2 people's thighs and swung them around as if he was holding 2 one-legged bronze statues. These martial artists with strong muscles and deep internal energy were actually quite suitable to be weapons. They were much more durable than ordinary steel weapons. With a sweep, 3 to 5 people were sent flying. As Sun Lang fought, he roared, "You've gone too far. Not only did you treat me coldly, you even ordered your servants to attack me." At this moment, the people inside finally reacted. Pei Ju rushed out as fast as he could and shouted, "Everyone stop! Everyone stop! His Highness is fine." Some of the guards calmed down upon hearing this. They wanted to pull back and retreat, but if they wanted to pull back and retreat in front of Sun Lang, they were simply tired of living. A few of them reacted a little slower and were sent flying by Sun Lang. From the looks of it, they were all home runs. The scene was a complete mess. Pei Ju was both anxious and angry. How could this fellow be so wild? Does he even care about the rules? He shouted, "Sun Lang, you're picking a fight in the first prince's residence. I must report you." Sun Lang roared, "All right, let's go to the gate of heaven influence right now." Pei Ju was about to go crazy. "You came uninvited first and then threatened His Highness. When you left, you provoked the guards and beat up the innocent. Now you're still acting so arrogant and lawless. Do you really think that the emperor can't punish you?" Sun Lang raised his eyebrows and said, "You're inverting right and wrong. This son has learned a lot. This son is disheartened and wants to resign and return home. Before I left, I wanted to pay a visit to the first prince. Who would have thought that the first prince would not meet me? You traitorous officials even mocked and ridiculed this Sunday. This son bid farewell and left, but these unruly servants actually pulled out their swords and attacked me. I was forced to fight back, but you still say that I'm lawless and a bully." Pei Ju sternly said, "Everyone is watching and there are witnesses. Who is the one who is inverting right and wrong? Everyone knows who is right and wrong. Don't try to use your glib tongue." Sun Lang dug his nose and sighed, "Evil king, you're being naughty again. Right and wrong is not in people's hearts. It's who has the loudest voice, who speaks first, who can let more people hear it. Otherwise, why would there be a newspaper? Why would there be a restriction on the news? Why would there be a wall? Why would there be a deletion of posts? For example," he laughed, "did you hear my broadcast earlier? I infused it with internal energy and transmitted it thousands of miles away. The entire imperial city could hear it. What do you think will happen if I broadcast those words that inverted right and wrong?" Pei Ju's expression suddenly changed. "You." Sun Lang seemed to have guessed what he wanted to say. He smiled and said, "How is it? Are you happy? Are you surprised? What do you think of this move?" Great official Shansei General Sun Lang congratulates His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. "Today, I came uninvited to teach Your Highness a lesson. I'll let Your Highness experience the so-called battle of public opinion." He raised his voice and said, "His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, whether I stay or leave, you tell me." Pei Ju became anxious and said loudly, "Even if you could deceive the common people for a while, you can't deceive the eyes of His Majesty and all the officials. When the time comes, you'll know who is right and who is wrong." Sun Lang's smile was still as harmless as before. "So you plan to fight this kind of lawsuit in front of His Majesty? Are you sure? Are you really sure?" At this moment, there was a commotion in the hall. The first prince, Jianxing, walked out with his subordinates. His expression was solemn as he bowed respectfully on the steps. "General, an important official of the country, your visit today brings light to my humble abode." Sun Lang smiled and returned the greeting. "Greetings to His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince." What really moved the first prince, who had difficulty making a choice, was not the threat or the use of force. It was that simple phrase, "His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince." At least Sun Lang had made his attitude clear. Pei Ju stamped his foot and said, "Your Highness." Sigh. Wang Gue looked at him proudly, as if he had successfully won His Majesty's favor. Jianshang brought people to welcome Sun Lang back. The scene in the hall was completely different. General Shansei was no longer an uninvited guest. Instead, he was a guest of honor that the first prince treated with respect. This was not an easy choice, but Sun Lang had achieved his goal in the end. As for what Prince Jianxing was thinking, that was another matter. Sun Lang did not care. He only needed to achieve his goal. Whatever plans Li Jianshang had in mind, whatever schemes he was hatching, none of these were within his consideration. General Shansei went straight to the point. "Today, I came to discuss a business deal with the first prince." Well, he was calling him the first prince again. Jianxing's heart trembled. He vaguely understood what Sun Lang meant. If this business deal did not go through, he would be the first prince. If it went through, he would be the crown prince. However, he still felt a little apprehensive and troubled. "General, you are an understanding person. You should know that I am in a difficult position. After all, it may be difficult to explain to my imperial father. After all, he is my imperial father. Furthermore," Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "This is easy. I know that your imperial father does not like me. I know that you do not want to be too close to me. This does not matter. There is no need for any agreement between us, nor is there any need for an alliance. You can even tell your imperial father everything that happened today. You can push all the blame onto me. No, all the blame was on you." Everyone was expressionless, but they were all complaining in their hearts. "So, you can use any method you like to recover your lost impression with the Emperor, and I can promise you that your harvest will be very bountiful." Sun Lang knocked on the table and smiled warmly. "It is only a business deal. First Prince, I will help you secure your position as Crown Prince. In return, you will do me a small favor. How about it?" His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince lowered his eyes and said indifferently, "How small a favor?" Sun Lang revealed a very manly and lecherous expression. He laughed and said, "It is really very, very small. Moreover, you will most likely be very willing. It is just that, fellow countrymen, don't you have a younger sister?" Chapter 1041. After Sun Lang left, Li Jiansheng and his aides were still deep in thought. Everyone looked at each other. No one said anything, but their gazes revealed a message that all men understood. "Tisk, tsk, tsk." Someone sighed, and then everyone's lips curled into a strange smile. "This is called taking the firewood from under the cauldron." Wang Gui stroked his beard and said calmly, "How ruthless." Someone laughed softly and said, "Looks like His Highness Empress is going to live in seclusion and won't be able to get out of bed." This sentence resonated with everyone, and they all laughed mischievously. Their faces were filled with boundless imagination. This was the nature of men. Their balls were hard. After all, Sun Lang's suggestion was really too provocative. In the happy atmosphere of a good person living a peaceful life, Li Jiansheng coughed dryly and said slowly, "Everyone focus. Don't let your imagination run wild. We're talking about serious matters." Pei Ju frowned from beginning to end. He had a tough personality and was suspicious. From the beginning, he had insisted on not associating with Sun Lang and firmly standing on the Emperor's side. At this moment, he was also carefully considering Sun Lang's intentions. He thought for a moment and said, "Your Highness, this matter may not be so simple." Wang Gui loved to go against Pei Ju. The two of them did not get along very well, because their temperaments were very different and their styles of giving advice were also very different. He said, "Master Pei, General Shin's thoughts are deep and he is resourceful. Forgive me for saying this, but it is wishful thinking for you to try and guess his thoughts." Pei Ju glared at him. "Then can Master Wang guess?" Wang Gui replied calmly, "Of course not. The world is unpredictable, and the human heart is difficult. Wise people like us must know our own limits. If we can't guess the human heart, then there's no need to guess. I don't care what Sun Lang's intentions are. I only care about the benefits and drawbacks of this matter to your Highness. If the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, then we can do it." He looked at Li Jiansheng and said, "Your Highness, Sun Lang's intention is very simple. He hates Empress deeply. Not only does he want to completely defeat him, but he also wants to completely vent the hatred in his heart. It is reasonable for him to come up with such a plan. Once the marriage is completed, it's equivalent to Empress falling into his hands. In this way, not only will General Tensei have no hope of making a comeback, but he will also be ridiculed and humiliated by Sun Lang in order to vent his hatred." The men laughed strangely again. They must have imagined a lot of G's books. Props, letters, education, corporal punishment, depravity, everything that one could imagine. It was very exciting. Li Jiansheng sank into deep thought. He was a little schizophrenic. As a man, and also as the Emperor's concubine's competitor, he expressed 666 in regards to Sun Lang's high-end operations. However, The emperor's concubine was his little sister after all, and also had the blood of the royal family flowing through her. Once he thought of himself helping to push his little sister into the abyss of depravity, he felt that something wasn't right. He hesitated and said, "Isn't this a little?" Wang Gui advised. "Your Highness, those who achieve great things do not care about trifles. This matter is also beneficial to you. Although you are now the crown prince, the imperial court is in chaos, and the people's hearts are in turmoil. Empress Tensei is still in seclusion. She is still the biggest variable. We only need to do a little work and push Empress into Sun Lang's arms. Then, General Shansei will help us block all of Emperor's counterattacks and threats. We can also use this opportunity to obtain Sun Lang's help and support to completely secure the position of Crown Prince. Isn't this a win-win situation?" Li Jiansheng was already greatly moved. But according to the pattern of the past, after the first prince was persuaded by one strategist, another strategist would jump out and use persuasive reasons to put forward an opposing view, thus putting him in a dilemma. Thus, Peiju said, No, Your Highness, please observe carefully. Sun Lang is truly a tiger. We cannot scheme with him." Li Jiansheng's expression was one of disapproval. Wang Gui said in a strange tone, "Lord Pei, you are giving up on eating for fear of choking. This old man has already said that no matter what Sun Lang is thinking, his scheme is beneficial to your Highness, so this matter can be carried out." Peiju said loudly, "Although that is the case, is it really that simple? Everyone, please think about it. Sun Lang's scheme is to ask your Highness to arrange the marriage. However, in order to achieve this goal, what methods did he use? First, he came uninvited. Then, he revealed his strength, retreated in order to advance. He caused a huge ruckus in the residence, completely dampening our spirit. Then, he used threats and promises to force your Highness to lower his head. Finally, he revealed his true intentions. He looked at Prince Jiansheng and said in a serious tone, "Your Highness, please observe carefully. For such a scheming person, in order to achieve his goal, he would set up layers upon layers of interlocking schemes. He would use all of his methods and lie in ambush for thousands of miles. If such a person had ulterior motives and had hidden a fatal trap in this transaction, would we have been able to discover it? Would we have been able to withstand it?" Jiansheng was momentarily stunned. His expression gradually became one of fear. Sun Lang's proposal had indeed moved him. To be able to stabilize his position as the crown prince, while also dealing with Empress Tensei's hidden danger, was indeed a temptation that he could not refuse. However, this did not mean that he had a good impression of Sun Lang. He had already wanted to kill Sun Lang long ago. This was because Sun Lang had no respect for him at all. He would shout and threaten him at every turn. He did not show any respect for the crown prince of the empire at all. Such a domineering and lawless person would be viewed as a great threat by any ruler. Therefore, if Sun Lang really did have ulterior motives, so what? We need this transaction. Wang Gui's voice rang out. His tone was very firm and bitter. Peiju frowned. "You?" Li Jiansheng also looked over. Wang Gui sighed. "Although your Highness has been appointed as the crown prince, there are 3 dangers. First, the appointment of the crown prince in a hurry will cause the people's hearts to be in turmoil. Your Highness is at the heart of the storm, with many powers competing against each other. The ministers outside the palace are requesting for orders. The slightest bit of carelessness will cause you to lose the support of the people and your reputation to plummet. Second, it comes from Sun Lang. Everyone should know by now. When the ministers outside the palace were requesting for orders, the one who was the most enthusiastic was Sun Lang. He came with the support of the general situation. He can stabilize your Highness's position as the crown prince, but he can also cause your Highness to fall from that position. If we don't cooperate with him, we will have one more enemy." Everyone's expressions changed slightly. Peiju said loudly, "That's why I said that Sun Lang cannot be trusted. The plan now is to stand together with His Majesty and face all criticism with dignity. The current emperor is a powerful ruler. As long as His Majesty is determined, He will help your highness become the crown prince, even if there are tens of thousands of voices of opposition. Wang Gui said in a low voice. But what if his majesty also has ulterior motives? Pei Ju's pupils suddenly shrank. He was momentarily stunned and speechless. The clamor in the hall instantly quieted down. Li Jianqing's body trembled. Then, he said with a straight face, "Teacher." Wang Gui said calmly. Everyone present is a trusted confidant. There's no harm in saying it out loud. Moreover, Sun Lang has already brought up this matter a long time ago. The battle for the crown prince was originally unclear. Why did His Majesty choose the crown prince overnight? What exactly happened when Empress entered the palace last night? What exactly happened that caused her, who had the most hope, to lose the emperor's favor? What inside story is behind the changes in the Star Sword Palace? Why did the Wood Sword Saint fake his death? Why did the Sword Saint of the Kingdom get involved? All sorts of chaotic events. Everything is strange. His tone gradually became Sunran. So, I can't help but think more about it. I can't help but be suspicious. Your Highness, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but your position as the crown prince was obtained far too easily. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. They didn't expect Wang Gui to be so bold as to bring up such a sensitive political issue as soon as he opened his mouth, but in their hearts, they all had to admit that what Wang Gui said was very reasonable. When things are out of the ordinary, there must be something fishy going on. Wang Gui said calmly, "Master Pei is right about one thing. The current emperor is a powerful ruler and cannot be measured by common sense. His intentions in appointing your highness as the crown prince are still unknown." Pei Ju said bitterly, "What you mean is this? This is just a..." Wang Gui said calmly, "I only know that if His Majesty can withstand the protests and counterattacks of the imperial court and secure your highness' position as the crown prince, then it would be just as easy to remove your highness from the throne." Li Jianqing's expression kept changing. As a strategist, we naturally have to consider the worst possible outcome. So, your highness, we cannot become His Majesty's puppets. You cannot become the crown prince so carelessly. Otherwise, you will definitely be removed from your position in the future. Wang Gui said solemnly, "We have to secure this position ourselves and take advantage of any changes. We can even form a check with His Majesty and not let the emperor control everything." Pei Ju's eyes flickered. He said in a low voice, "Is that why you want to cooperate with Sun Lang? In the current imperial court, he is the most suitable candidate. Only this Shunsei general will continue to arm wrestle with His Majesty and fight with the emperor in all areas. His position is the most resolute and resolute." Wang Gui's eyes were serene as he said softly, "Yesterday's chaos at the Jupiter Sword Palace was all related to him. Previously, His Majesty had suffered many setbacks because of Sun Lang. I heard that Sun Lang almost dragged Ling Yuli into the palace to lodge an imperial complaint. Presumably, there will be another conflict. Based on this line of thought, His Majesty's hasty appointment of the Crown Prince today might be a counterattack against Sun Lang's actions yesterday." Pei Ju subconsciously retorted, "That's impossible. What kind of situation would require a hasty appointment of the Crown Prince and stirring up chaos in the imperial court as a counterattack?" Wang Gui looked at him expressionlessly. "I don't know. Do you want to investigate?" Pei Ju shuddered. "I don't want to." Wang Gui snorted indifferently and continued, "Although this conjecture is absurd, if you think about it carefully, it matches all the signs. Everyone, His Majesty's hasty appointment of the Crown Prince today has caused chaos in the imperial court. There are ministers begging for orders, various departments arguing. His Majesty is facing heavy pressure from both inside and outside. Empress Tensei is losing power, and the imperial court is in a mess. Under these circumstances, who will benefit the most?" Li Jiansheng hesitated. "Me?" Pei Ju shook his head. The two think tanks had reached a consensus on this question. "No, we also have to face hostility, malice, and criticism. The problem is just as thorny. The one who benefits the most is Sun Lang." Li Jiansheng pursed his lips. It was like this every time. These two fellows would only reach an astonishing synchronicity and consensus when they were dissing him or pouring cold water on him. Wang Gui continued, "Yes, the one who benefits the most is Sun Lang. His enemies are His Majesty and Empress. However, His Majesty's appointment of the Crown Prince has been met with protests from both the Imperial Court and the Imperial Court. The ministers and the Empress Dowager are all questioning his decision. Empress has lost the opportunity to compete for the position of the Crown Prince. His reputation and influence will definitely plummet, and he will even have to face the joint efforts of both the Crown Prince and His Majesty to weaken and suppress him. If I were Sun Lang, I would definitely sit down and watch the show. I would only come out to reap the benefits when both sides have suffered." But he didn't do that, Pei Ju continued. "If something is out of the ordinary, there must be something wrong." With Sun Lang's shrewdness and intelligence, he didn't just sit there and watch the tigers fight. Instead, he took the initiative to jump out and even went to the gate of heaven influence to stand up for him. The ministers outside the palace knocked on the gate and asked for the Crown Prince's order. It was clearly a battle between the emperor and the ministers, but Sun Lang's interference caused everyone's attention to be focused on him. This kind of behavior is completely illogical, unless... Wang Gui said decisively, "Unless he knows that His Majesty's hasty appointment of the Crown Prince is a counterattack against his actions last night. It is precisely because of this, and because he doesn't understand His Majesty's intentions and plans, that he took the initiative to take the initiative in his own hands to seize a commanding position where he can attack or retreat. Just as he suggested to His Highness, he doesn't understand what happened after Empress entered the palace last night. He doesn't understand why His Majesty made the great prince the Crown Prince and neglected Empress. So he simply took the initiative to attack and used the marriage as an excuse to take control of Empress first." "No," Wang Gui said thoughtfully, "perhaps it's not just that. With Sun Lang's intelligence, methods, and power, there are simply too many ways for him to take advantage of Empress when she's down. There is no need to pay attention to the marriage, unless he feels that Empress is also very important to His Majesty. So he wants to control Empress in the palm of his hand, or make such a gesture to force His Majesty to take the next step." Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. In the end, these are just your guesses. Pei Ju calmed himself down and said softly, "Besides, if your guesses are correct, then we can't work with Sun Lang even more. Why not?" Wang Gui said coldly, "If my guesses are correct, then it proves that His Majesty's appointment of the Crown Prince is only a temporary measure. Perhaps in the future, His Highness will still be deposed. If such a thing happens, who would be willing to accept it? Would you, Pei Hong, agree? Would you, Your Highness? Would you, everyone? Glory, splendor, wealth, and status vanish in the blink of an eye. Who would be willing to accept it? None of us would," he said in a low voice. "His Imperial Highness is the Crown Prince. You've been well-read since you were young, and now you're about to become the Crown Prince. May I ask, in the history of the Qing dynasty, which Crown Prince stabilized his position as the Crown Prince because of filial piety?" Li Jianxing was silent. "At least this time, please work with Sun Lang. His Majesty can't be trusted completely, and Sun Lang can't be trusted completely even more. However, we have to borrow Sun Lang's power to gain a firm foothold as soon as possible." Of course, Wang Gui didn't expect something else. After Shinsei, General Sun Lang, left the first prince's mansion in satisfaction, he ran back to Tensei province, and he even brought along half a cup of wine with him. Chapter 1042. Just like what many transmigrators had done, Sun Lang had also worked as a goodwill ambassador for the spread of culture between the two worlds in his spare time. To put it bluntly, he was telling stories. No matter which world, no matter what civilization, stories were always prevalent. Humans were used to drawing strength from other people's stories to satisfy their own spiritual needs. Because a person's life was ultimately limited, many wonderful sceneries could not be experienced personally. They needed others to do it for them, relay it, and share it with them. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with transmigrators telling stories. At least, it was much more useful than the barbecue skill. But there was a problem here. It was said that after transmigrating to another world, one had to tell stories. Then the problem was, could an ordinary person who did not specialize in this field really tell the complete and wonderful stories he had read to others? At least, Sun Lang could not. He had tried before. For example, when he wanted to tell the story of Journey to the West, he awkwardly found that he could only remember the general context. There were also some well-known and wonderful plot fragments, but most of his impressions came from the TV series he had watched when he was young. If you asked him what exactly the 81 difficulties Tang Sanzang encountered were, and how many monsters' caves he had entered along the way, he would most likely not be able to piece them together. Some things were easy to think about in the head, but it was very difficult to actually do it. But it didn't matter. Even if he couldn't remember everything, he could modify and fill in the gaps. Anyway, no one in this world would jump out and accuse him of making things up. Mr. Wu Chenjin would also not lift the coffin lid and jump out to beat him up. Even if he really jumped out, he would not be able to beat him. The original work had nothing to do with him. If the 4 great classical novels were like this, there was no need to mention the story of the female tutor, Madame Bai. Sun Lang had told many modified stories in this world. He even set off a craze of storytelling in the army. When the war was not urgent, it even became a trend in the army. Every day after dinner, everyone would bring their small stools to the commander of war's place to listen to stories. It was really crowded, and those with lower ranks could not even squeeze in. The influence was far-reaching, and it was not wrong to say that it was an endless stream of people. However, what many people did not know was that the person who listened to Commander of War stories the most was actually Empress Tensei. For a long time, Her Highness Empress was Sun Lang's exclusive trash talk dumpster. Whenever Sun Lang thought of something, he would talk to her. When Empress wanted to listen, she would listen attentively without blinking. When she didn't want to listen, she would casually say, "Oh." When she understood something, she would think for half a night. Most of the time, she would roll her eyes. At that time, Sun Lang was really talkative and bored. Moreover, he would often say some disgraceful words and opinions. Stories like the water margin had naturally been told before. The emperor's concubine had always remembered the situation of that day. It was at night, the tent was on fire, and it was snowing outside. She and Sun Lang were drinking. That fellow was extremely bored, so he smiled and said, "This reminds me of the day when Pan Jinlian and Wu Song were together. It was also snowing, and the two of them were also drinking." So he ignored Empress's sidelong glance and started to tell the story of that day. He told her that Wu Song became a Dutu after defeating a tiger and inadvertently identified with his brother. He also told her that Pan Jinlian, who was very beautiful, had been lonely since she married 3-inch Nail. When she saw her uncle who had grown up majestically, her heart surged with love and she wanted to flirt with him. He told her that Pan Jinlian and Wu Song drank together, drank half a cup, and pushed the cup to her husband. Her eyebrows and eyes were like spring water, and she said the classic line, "If you have the heart, eat my half cup of wine." When Empress heard this, her eyes were cold, and the corners of her mouth were disdainful. She looked at Jia Ying with a faint smile, as if she had already thought of the following development of the story. She was mocking the commander of war for telling these dirty stories all day long, but he did not have the courage to be lecherous. He only knew how to flirt in front of women. Sure enough, in his vivid narration, Wu Song, the indomitable tiger hero, actually took the wine cup and responded to his sister-in-law's seduction. It was simply a bed scene for the sake of bed scenes, ignoring the character setting. Not only was it obscene, but it was also boring. Empress just wanted to mock a few more words, but she heard Jia Ying continue to say, "What a tiger hero." He drank sister-in-law's wine without changing his expression and then handed it back, saying that if sister-in-law has the heart, you can drink a quarter of the wine. Then Jinlian drank half of the wine again, leaving 1/8, and handed it back. Wu Song drank half of the wine again and gave the remaining 1/16 to sister-in-law to drink. Empress listened with a strange expression and said in astonishment, Isn't this endless? When Commander of War heard this, he slapped his thigh and looked very excited, although Empress did not understand why this guy was so excited. That's the reason. Zhuangzi said that half of a foot's worth is taken in the day, and it will never be exhausted. This is our ancestors' extremely important limit idea. So, while he was drunk, he casually summoned a short sword and carved out a row of derivative formulas on the table to calculate the limit of the derivative function. In the end, he said happily, the method to find the limit of the derivative, the beauty of mathematics, can also be used to race. When he finished speaking, his hands and feet danced, smiling from ear to ear, as if he had done a little work again. So, the water margin was told like this by him. So at that time, Empress naturally spat out the word F*ck off. But when she said F*ck off, there was a smile in Empress's eyes. She laughed at Sun Lang's laziness, and felt that this guy's messy appearance was a little funny, and even a little deeper joy, because Sun Lang was only so unscrupulous in front of her, saying whatever he could think of. No matter how rebellious his ideas were, no matter how heavy and formidable his knowledge was. At that time, she and Sun Lang were too young and naive and could not see through the changes of things. Or rather, they saw through it, but they firmly believed that emotions could win over cold interests and that people's hearts could solve thorny problems. But they were wrong in the end. But where they were wrong, perhaps even the people involved could not tell. At least at that time, when Empress said F*ck off, she would never have thought of it. Who would have thought that in just a few years the Sky Demon would be defeated, but they would not be able to get what they wanted? Not only that, but fate made fools of them. The two of them tore apart their false illusions and pretense, and became irreconcilable enemies. And when her memories of the past had long been sealed and preserved, that person actually specially brought half a cup of wine to her door to play this kind of joke that seemed like it was a lifetime ago. At this moment, the Empress concubine's feelings were truly complicated and indescribable, and she still had the same reaction as back then, as if time had never moved forward, as if nothing had changed. But in the end, it had changed. Empress's face was covered in frost, and there was a cold smile on her lips. F*ck off. She reached out and slapped the wine cup heavily. Hey, what are you doing? Sun Lang hurriedly protected it, and then said unhappily, even if you are not satisfied with drinking, at least drink a quarter of it for the sake of our old friendship, and give it back to me. It can also be considered as reliving old memories. If you say a few more words about taking half a day, it can also give me a sense of joy of meeting a fan in a foreign land. He angrily put away the wine cup. Maybe I'll help you when I'm happy. Empress's expression was calm, and she ignored the bait that Sun Lang threw out. Now that the emperor appointed the first prince as the crown prince, it caused great turmoil in the imperial court. Many people failed in the stock market, and Tiantai was in sight. The ones who were most affected were the contestants for the crown prince. Among them, Empress Tensei was the most affected. She used to be a popular candidate for the crown prince. She was highly favored by the emperor and had great power. Once she failed in the competition, she fell directly into the dust. Not only did she lose the throne, but she also couldn't keep the power in her hands now. Those political allies who pursued profits had to decisively stop losses and abandon her. Although it was said that a centipede would die but not fall down, and with her accumulation and arrangement over the years, she might not have to surrender and be trampled on. The key problem was that compared with the hostility from her father, the crown prince, and the imperial court, Sun Lang, who had been watching covetously from the side, was the most fatal threat. Now that she suddenly failed in the competition for the crown prince, with Sun Lang's means and temperament, he would never let go of such a great opportunity. The situation was already so grim, but the empress concubine still maintained her dignity and toughness in front of Sun Lang. She wasn't willing to show any weakness or confusion. She definitely wasn't willing to let Sun Lang see her in such a sorry state. General Tensei looked at Sun Lang and suddenly asked, "In the real story, Pan Jinlian handed half a cup of wine to Wu Song. Wu Song refused to drink it, right? What happened later? Sun Lang said expressionlessly. Jinlian courageously pursued love and even abandoned the so-called human relations. She was unwilling to be forced to marry Wu Dalong. She felt that such a life was unacceptable, so she bravely confessed to Wu Song. Unfortunately, the male chauvinist Wu Song firmly rejected Jinlian's love for the sake of his eldest brother. Later, Wu Dalong died in an accident. Before he died, he saw Wu Song's repressed feelings, so he begged his second brother to take care of his wife. His intention of entrusting her to him was obvious. Wu Song had always liked Jinlian. With his eldest brother's last words, he had an excuse to deceive himself and others. He wanted to continue his fate with Jinlian. But Jinlian had already been disappointed in Wu Song after experiencing the previous rejection and humiliation. She fell in love with Westgate big official. The two of them got to know each other, flew together, and lived happily together. Wu Song was full of regret and secretly went to flirt with Jinlian, but he was righteously rejected. After this change, his love turned to hate. He went to the extreme and did not hesitate to go up the mountain and become a bandit. He attracted the bandits of Liangshan to kill Shimenqing and rob Jinlian to go up the mountain. Who would have thought that he would go for wool and come home shorn? In the end, he even lost his life. This was already beyond the scope of the devil's modification. The insinuations were almost overflowing. Empress chuckled. This was probably the first time she showed a relaxed and pure smile in front of Sun Lang after so many years. She said with certainty, "You must have made it up." Sun Lang said lightly, "I didn't make it up. If you don't believe me, you can read the original book." Empress suddenly sighed and said softly, "Are you here to laugh at me?" This was Empress's bedroom. When the news came this morning, the imperial capital was in an uproar. For the ministers of Tensei, it was as if the sky had collapsed. They had already submitted to Empress and listened to her orders. They fought side by side during the war, and when the war ended, they would fight for the throne. If Empress ascended the throne, they would be rich and powerful. However, if she failed to become the crown prince, they would not have a good ending. Therefore, when the news came, they all rushed to Tensei province at the fastest speed to gather together to discuss countermeasures. Compared to the strategists under the eldest prince, the ministers of Tensei were even more confused and shocked. Why did something like this happen after Her Highness went to the imperial palace last night? Did she do something that angered His Majesty? Or was it a trap? They had too many questions that they wanted answers to. But the Emperor's concubine had been in seclusion the entire time. She had dismissed her maids and bodyguards and was alone in her room in deep thought. Then, Sun Lang had appeared like a ghost. Perhaps Empress had expected Sun Lang to come back, or she had been waiting for him. But what kind of answer she was waiting for? Even she did not know. Sun Lang was also silent. He had imagined the situation when he met Empress. He felt that according to his usual style, he should first beat the ground and laugh for a few minutes, then laugh at Empress for a few minutes, and then laugh wildly for a few minutes. In short, he must make Empress angry for being incompetent before he could vent his anger. But there were some things that thinking and doing were two different things. After they met, he did not laugh, and Empress did not get angry. Both of them were in a calm state of mind, and there was no atmosphere of hostility at all. It was as if Sun Lang had not thrown 7 or 8 cans of herring here last night. A moment later, he said, "I will only laugh at you in front of your tombstone. I don't have time for that now." Without waiting for Empress to reply, he habitually seized the initiative of the conversation. "I came here today to confirm something. As the person who knew Sun Lang best, Empress certainly would not let him take the initiative as he wished." "Confirm something? Why should I let you confirm it? Even if you confirm it, so what?" Sun Lang said lightly. "If you confirm it, we may have the possibility of cooperation." Empress looked at him in shock, and then showed a mocking smile. "You're looking down on me too much. There is no possibility of cooperation between the two of us." Sun Lang shook his head. "Don't speak too confidently. There are no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. I taught you this sentence. Don't you take it to heart? The emperor's concubine continued to sneer. No matter who you work with, you won't work with me. Sun Lang, I know your personality. You are suspicious, you hold grudges, and you seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Even if you say that you want to work with me, you definitely don't have good intentions. In this lifetime, you will never believe a single word I say. So why would you work with me? Sun Lang smiled. I don't believe you, but I can see for myself. See? What can you see? Can you see why Father suddenly appointed the crown prince? Can you see why Father neglected me? Can you see what Father is planning? Can you tell if Imperial Father and I are plotting some evil scheme against you? Can you see if this is another trap? The coldness and disdain in Empress Tensei's eyes continued to expand. So you can see it? Sun Lang nodded, a strange smile on his lips. I can see it. I can see it. His eyes were like lightning as he stared fixedly at the changes in Empress's expression. With the eyesight of a peerless expert and the strength of his spiritual sense, he had reached the level of insight. He paid attention to all the changes in Empress. He said, I can see. A father's love is like a mountain. Originally, there was nothing wrong with these words. But between Sun Lang and Empress, these words had a subtle and strange meaning. Empress was suddenly stunned, and then her expression suddenly changed. She was shrewd, calm, and wise, and good at disguising herself. But everything had a limit. She was a woman in the end. What she saw, heard, and encountered last night was already beyond her imagination and her tolerance. It was a weight she could not bear. Sun Lang saw the changes in Empress's expression. He said lightly, as expected, Empress could no longer hide her true thoughts, or she knew it was useless to hide them. The princess suddenly took a step forward and said sternly, What do you know? Sun Lang smiled. I know too much. Where should I start? Chapter 1043. Empress's eyes became extremely sharp. If eyes could kill, Sun Lang would probably have been cut into pieces. But it was useless. Although the Empress concubine's long military career had allowed her to cultivate the power to command the masses, her murderous eyes and incomparably sharp aura were unable to affect Sun Lang at all. It only reminded Sun Lang that his guess and judgment were correct. Just by looking at Empress's expression of shock, anger, disgust, and discomfort at that moment, he could guess what happened last night. It was too easy, because there weren't many things that could make Empress show that kind of expression. Sun Lang showed a mocking smile. Seeing this smile, Empress Concubine's heart was filled with anger. She knew what Sun Lang was thinking and also knew the origin of this ridicule. She gritted her teeth and said, Are you very proud? Sun Lang said calmly, No, I'm very happy. I saw the reincarnation of heaven. I saw the retribution of good and evil. I told you that there is justice in this world. I told you that there is retribution in this world. For the throne, you didn't hesitate to carry out your father's order, even if the order was to kill me. Then what about now? What did you get? Empress had nothing to say. She sneered. Didn't you say you would laugh at me in front of my tombstone? Sun Lang said lightly, In fact, I am facing a tombstone now. Empress couldn't figure out the meaning of this sentence for a while, and Sun Lang wouldn't give her time to think carefully. General Shansei stepped forward and sneered. You entered the palace at night yesterday and lost the favor today. What is the reason? Is it another trap set by you and your imperial father, or did you do something that made your imperial father unhappy? General Tensei, can you tell me? Empress's eyes flashed with anger and said coldly, You can go. No, I won't leave. What do you do about it? Sun Lang sneered and said, Save it. You've already lost so badly that you can't even protect yourself. Even if I don't leave now, you can't do anything to me. Your loyal subjects are waiting outside bitterly, wanting to discuss important matters with you. You've lost the position of crown prince, and they've also lost their glory, splendor, and wealth. They must want to know why this happened. Why did you, who had the heart of the emperor and the majesty of the emperor, fall to the dust overnight? But do you really dare to say the reason? Empress gritted his teeth and said, Shut up. Sun Lang said calmly. Why should I shut up? I knew that the imperial family was corrupt and the Forbidden Palace was filthy, but I've never seen the real thing. Today, I've finally opened my eyes. With the enmity between me and your Lee family, I should be beating the drums and beating the gongs to announce it to the world. Before he finished speaking, Empress flew into a rage. Regardless of the difference in strength between the two of them, the Tianyuan blade leaped out of his palm and slashed towards Sun Lang's head. The Tianyuan blade was a treasure of the imperial family and was unparalleled in the world. The empire had been established for hundreds of years, and the sacred weapons supervisor had created countless imperial army. But there were very few weapons that could compare to the seven luminaries' sacred sword, and the Tianyuan blade was one of them. This blade was originally used by the emperor. In the late stages of the Tianyuan War, in order to reward Empress Tensei for his great contributions to the country, he was specially bestowed with this blade in order to kill the enemy for the emperor. This was the official statement. But the actual intention, other than the emperor and the devil, only Sun Lang could guess. Seeing the emperor's concubine take out the Heaven Origin blade, a dark light flashed in Sun Lang's eyes. When he saw the blade coming towards him, he flicked his hand. A muffled sound rang out, and the emperor's concubine staggered backwards. The power of the sacred sword and the Tianyuan blade collided. At the same time, in the Forbidden Palace, the devil's whisper sounded in the emperor's ear. The Tianyuan blade has sensed the seven luminaries' sacred sword. Sun Lang has gone to find your daughter. The emperor's mouth curved into a sneer, as expected. The devil was dissatisfied. What do you want to do? Why did you suddenly go crazy and make your eldest son the crown prince? The outer court is in chaos. The ministers are turbulent, and the inner court is in turmoil. Your mother is blocked outside by you. Let's not talk about this for now. What's the benefit of making your eldest son the crown prince? Li Jianxing's aptitude is unsightly, and his compatibility with you is extremely poor. Moreover, there's not enough time to cultivate him from the beginning. The emperor said indifferently. Who said I chose Jianxing? The devil was very angry. No one could calm down after being mysteriously manipulated by a pig teammate. Hearing this, he was even angrier. Then why did you do this? People in the inner court and the outer court all know that your daughter has fallen out of favor. With Sun Lang's temperament and decisiveness, if he kills her in the chaos, everything you have done will be for nothing. The emperor heard this and showed a strange smile. No, he won't. Wrong, he will. The devil Yuan Zhu was almost the person who knew Sun Lang best in the world. Do you think he will be reluctant to give up his old love? Wrong. He looks like a person who is overcautious and timid. Once he is hurt by love, he will not be able to let it go for the rest of his life. He may miss and recall, but he will never have illusions and compromise. He has no feelings for your daughter. You and your daughter are definitely the two people he wants to kill the most in the world. The emperor's smile was still very cold. I know, of course I know. He has suffered such a big loss. Since he is not dead, he will definitely take revenge. But revenge also has a difference in means. His hatred is engraved in his bones. Even if he wants to take revenge, he must do it thoroughly. Otherwise, he can kill his way into the capital and directly cut off my head, instead of wasting time with me in the imperial court. The devil said so. So, he'll go to find Sure, but he will not touch a single hair of hers. Because in addition to Sure, I am also his enemy. He wants to take revenge, but revenge also has a difference in means. Now that Sure has fallen out of favor, and something like that happened last night, with Sun Lang's hatred in means, he will definitely instigate us father and daughter to become enemies. He will even set off a rebellion to fight for the throne. Let the royal family kill each other, let the country collapse, and cause the country to be in turmoil. Only in this way can he vent his anger. And there is such a good opportunity now. The devil said thoughtfully, So all this was planned by you? The emperor nodded. You can say that. I made Jiansheng the crown prince. With Sure-Er's temper, she will definitely not be willing to be captured. She has sacrificed a lot for the throne, and even did not hesitate to attack Sun Lang. Now that she has encountered such a thing, How could she just laugh it off? Moreover, last night in the palace. In short, with my understanding of this daughter, she will most likely be persuaded by Sun Lang and have some inappropriate thoughts. The devil said with a frown, and then? You will have to possess her in the end. But how can a rebellious empress convince the officials? What do you want to do by going in such a big circle? The emperor smiled coldly. This is very easy. Whether empress is a rebel who started the rebellion or a loyal official who is under the orders of the emperor, the so-called truth is just a matter of me moving my mouth. What I really want to do is to redesign a trap that can make Sun Lang the enemy of the whole world and knock him down to the ground. Right now, he knows a lot of secrets, and he has always been on the side of justice. He has resisted me with the rules of the court, which has made my hands and feet tied. This time, I threw out the bait exactly for him to eat. I must nail him to the pillar of shame as a traitor and a traitor. Well said, the devil asked, but what about the actual operation? The emperor laughed softly. Don't worry, I've already thought about it. Because I can't wait any longer. I long for a young body. I long for the eternity of immortality. After possessing Shi-Er, there will only be Empress Tensei in the world, which means that Li Guangyuan will die. Since I am going to die, compared to peacefully dying of old age and passing on the throne to Tensei, why don't I use this life to set up a trap and use my death in exchange for Sun Lang's disgrace and let him fall into the trap I carefully weaved, making him the enemy of the whole world? Wouldn't that be better? Speaking of this, he laughed nervously. He must have gone crazy long ago. This so-called wise Lord Great Emperor had already been blinded by the dream of immortality that was close at hand, gradually losing his humanity and rationality. The devil also laughed. It sounds interesting, really interesting. I can't wait any longer. I want to completely eliminate this stumbling block, Sun Lang. As long as he is alive, my dream of immortality will not come true. So, he must die. And now, let it be proud for a while. The current Sun Lang was, of course, very proud. He did not know the contents of the secret conversation between the emperor and the devil, but what the emperor did not know was that not only did Sun Lang know about his dream of immortality, but he also guessed the way to realize it. Therefore, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Only Her Highness Empress, poor woman, had been kept in the dark from the beginning to the end. The dignified general of Tensei, the role model of all women in the world, the most beautiful woman of her generation, she had become a two-sided chess piece. Her ex-boyfriend and father had set up a trap around her that would not rest until she was dead. It was really pitiful, but this was undoubtedly retribution. Empress saw the pity in Sun Lang's eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, I hate your eyes. Sun Lang said indifferently, but you can't do anything. He looked at the heaven origin blade in the Empress concubine's hand with a meaningful gaze. You have already lost. After so many years of hard work and sacrifice, how much have you sacrificed? How much have you given up? In the end, it was all for naught. Not only will you not be able to become the emperor, you will also lose what you have now. Your imperial father will take away your authority, your crown prince brother will suppress your power, not to mention that I am still watching from the side. You have already completely lost. He looked at Empress's tall and beautiful figure. Not only was she beautiful, but she also had an inviolable noble temperament that attracted men's attention at all times. In other words, even if I put you in 18 different positions and fiercely F***ed you, you can't do anything. Empress clenched her fists and sneered. You only know how to sell your mouth. Do you have the guts to do this? Sun Lang said indifferently. It's just an example. A good horse doesn't go back to the pasture, and a good man doesn't go back to the cannon. This is not a matter of whether I dare or not, but a matter of whether I am willing or not. If I hug you now, I will vomit. Empress sneered. In the end, it's just, Sun Lang said again, don't be sad and disappointed. I don't want to touch you, and your father, the emperor, loves you. Empress was so angry that her blood surged. She stared at Sun Lang and gritted her teeth. Are you very happy to say such words to humiliate me? Are you very happy? She didn't know if it was an illusion, but her eyes were filled with clear mist. She was a woman after all. But Sun Lang was not moved. He replied calmly, "This is what you asked for. This is your own choice. You should know that if you had chosen another path 2 years ago, then things would have been different. At least, I would not have let you be hurt at all. When your father showed his face, I would have fought him at all costs. But the past was in the past and could not be pursued." Empress gave a helpless and sorrowful sigh. "And now, you are humiliating me." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "No, I am not that bored. I came to do business with you. I will not trust you again, but I can use you. I believe in profit, strategy, in my eyes. At least, the Emperor's actions today allowed me to see an opportunity and out." Empress looked at Sun Lang's face and then lowered her eyelids. She quietly said, "What if I am not willing?" Sun Lang spread out his hands and said, "Then I can only join forces with the Crown Prince and other forces to launch a storm of attacks on you, weaken your power, break your wings, and beat you down to the mortal world, trample you into the mud, make you suffer a crushing defeat, and make you have nothing. Then, guess what will happen?" The Emperor's concubine thought of the Emperor's twisted and sickly gaze last night. That strong desire turned into a hot breath that blew on her face. Even now, she could still remember that heat. A nauseating feeling surfaced in her heart. She slowly said, "At least I can choose death." "Yes, you can, but will you be satisfied?" Sun Lang guided her patiently. "If it were me, I would definitely not be satisfied. How much have you sacrificed for the throne? In the end, your father was lying to you. He promoted you, helped you, and doted on you, not because of your talent, not because of your ambition, but because of your body. Now that he can't have you, he actually abandoned you like a pair of worn-out shoes. You lived a grand life, but you died a silent death. You were shrouded in lies, deceived, and used for your whole life. Are you willing to accept that?" Empress said coldly, "You don't have to talk nonsense. I know you just want his father and daughter to kill each other. You just want revenge." Sun Lang smiled and said, "I don't deny it, but the reason why I'm talking nonsense here is that I'm sure you're not satisfied. I know your personality very well. You're ruthless to yourself, and of course, you're even more ruthless to others. You won't tolerate deceit and betrayal, even if the other party is your father." Empress interrupted him. "I don't want to become a chess piece for your revenge. I don't want to turn this country upside down and endlessly turbulent. Otherwise, wouldn't I be playing into your hands?" Sun Lang shrugged. "You're wrong again. Why do you always think of me as a chaotic and evil person? I don't want to kill everyone, and I don't want to turn this country into ruins. Otherwise, why would Android and the others follow me? Why would Yin Luo and the others believe me?" He looked into Empress' eyes and said calmly, "Do you think I would do such a thing?" The Empress' concubine subconsciously shifted her gaze. Sun Lang said softly, "Don't you want to teach that old guy a lesson? Anyway, I think, especially today, especially this time, I'm very angry. He's gone too far. The determination you made 2 years ago, the pain I suffered in the Great Bear Mountain, the fate that was cut off, and we who were strangers should have been moving forward hand in hand. Now, it turns out that all of this is just a joke in his eyes. Are you satisfied?" Chapter 1044. The appointment of the Crown Prince caused a huge wave and caused a series of subsequent reactions. The entire capital was surging with undercurrents. It could be imagined that this storm would continue to expand and affect the 9 states of the empire. This was related to the inheritance of the empire for the next few decades. It was related to the lives and wealth of countless people. Almost everyone dropped the pretense of elegance and was like dogs fighting for a bone. When it came to power and profit, there was not much difference between humans and dogs. After the appointment of the Crown Prince, except for the final winner, all the children of the imperial family who aspired to the throne were the biggest losers. Tensei Province was no exception. Today, Tensei Province closed its doors to visitors. Loyal officials and close allies secretly came to the palace. They were frightened, surprised, and helpless. They urgently needed a great leader to guide them in the right direction. They were all in panic. However, countless requests and inquiries did not result in the desired result. His Highness Empress also closed his door and did not come out. Even the most loyal aides and generals were not summoned. They were burning with anxiety. They carried out meaningless discussions and questions. People's hearts were in turmoil. Great uneasiness shrouded the sky of Tensei Province. Everyone was at a loss and uneasy. They hoped to see the undefeated general of Tensei. Because the crown prince had been appointed, Tensei was not fated. They had lost the reason to fight. They were not even sure if they should continue to fight. If so, who was the enemy? General of Tensei finally appeared in front of everyone amidst the waves of annoyance, anger, and quarrels. She was as beautiful, dignified, and calm as always. It seemed that the news of His Majesty's appointment of the crown prince did not affect this peerless imperial princess. Her body still exuded a majestic fighting spirit, just like when she faced the sky demon. No matter how difficult the situation was, it could not shake her determination. In this world, there were heroes. You had to admit that some people were born to stand in front of others. With just a gesture or a look, they could wake up the worn-out spirit and revive the low morale. Sun Lang was such a person. Empress was also such a person. General Tensei spoke concisely and decisively. It's still not clear who will emerge victorious. She looked around at everyone present and expressed her opinion in a tough tone. Everyone fought against the sky demon and made countless contributions. You protected this country with your courage and strength, both before and after the war. I am your leader, your comrade in arms, and your monarch. You protect the country, and I will protect you. Glory, splendor, wealth, and fame will be ours. Whoever dares to reach out and take it, I will chop off their claws. We will never leave each other in life, and we will never betray each other in death. Although he did not explicitly state that he would not invest in porcelain, the meaning behind his words was clear at a glance. This was exactly what the Tensei officials needed. The pressure from the emperor and the crown prince had not yet arrived, but the people's hearts were still in turmoil. General Tensei's power was still there. Now, they only needed His Highness Empress's guidance and a reason to continue fighting. That was enough. The Tensei officials cheered one after another. The restabilized willpower spread out along with the cheers and slowly infected the entire Tensei province. In an instant, the confusion disappeared and the sharpness was restored. The morale of the Tensei province was like a rainbow. Loud and clear cheers resounded in the huge mansion, shocking many spies who were trying to pry for information. Damn it, what are you shouting for? It's as if your highness has become the crown prince. Although they were complaining in their hearts, they still had to spread the news. Not long after, many leaders of forces in the imperial capital received information about the Tensei province. The indomitable willpower turned into fearless cheers that soared into the sky, as if showing everyone the willpower and strength of General Tensei. Many people sighed, as expected of General Tensei, as expected of Tensei province. But there were also people who sneered. They smelled the scent of a facade. The Heavenly Policy Mansion was still able to unite their wills as a stronghold because they had yet to experience pressure from the outside world. After a period of time, those aristocratic families who had made the wrong bet would definitely switch their allegiance to the crown prince one after another. Furthermore, the emperor, out of consideration for maintaining the stability of the imperial court, would also definitely take action to weaken the empress concubine's excessively enormous authority. When that time comes, would your Heavenly Policy Mansion still be as imposing as it is today? There was a saying in this world, everyone kicks a man who is down. Many people understood this principle, and the smart people in Tensei province certainly understood it. At the very least, people like Feng Xiao and Du Kemming felt a layer of haze cover their hearts as they cheered along with the crowd. Wise people were used to thinking about the worst of things and liked to think about the worst before thinking about victory. They saw an even more thorny future ahead of them. The true test was still to come. Did His Highness have a good plan to deal with it? Sun Lang, who had already left Tensei province, stopped in his tracks and turned back to look. He also heard the cheers from Tensei province. That's great," he sighed, but there wasn't a trace of a smile in his eyes. The relationship between people could be incomparably simple, but could also be incomparably complicated. However, the relationship between him and the emperor's concubine was both simple and complicated. It could be so simple that the word enemy could be used to describe it, but it could also be so complicated that even he himself could not understand it clearly. Therefore, dealing with Empress was the most troublesome and troublesome, because this woman not only understood him very well, but also was extremely rational and clear-headed. The biggest difficulty in guiding and using her was the relationship between the two. Empress didn't have the slightest bit of hope. She didn't regret what she had done in the past, let alone feel guilty. Since she didn't want to be lucky, she naturally wouldn't be fooled. She didn't think there was any possibility of reconciliation between her and Sun Lang. She believed that Sun Lang would never let her go. Therefore, she was very distrustful of any form of cooperation and alliance, because she really understood Sun Lang too well. She felt that even if they temporarily joined hands, the alliance formed would be very fragile. It would definitely be full of lies, deceit, and traps. Sun Lang would definitely think of a way to trick her to take revenge for the life and death enmity of the Great Desolate Mountain. Coincidentally, that's what I thought too. Sun Lang seemed to be talking to himself, or perhaps he was talking to the person in his heart. I also feel that even if we were working together and forming an alliance, you must have other ideas. You must be thinking of how to trick me again. However, the two of them really formed an alliance again, even if it was just a verbal promise. The reason for working together against the enemy was to have a common enemy. Back then, for the sake of the throne, for the sake of the emperor's promise, the emperor's concubine had turned her blade to Sun Lang, giving Jia Ying, who still had fantasies, a doomsday-like blow. She had sacrificed her most precious relationship, shattered Jia Ying's everything, and also sealed her own heart. The price she had to pay was so heavy, but she didn't get what she wanted. Not only did the emperor betray her, he even revealed his disgusting and ugly abnormal love to her. It was the most disgusting and shameful thing in the world. Not only was it a great irony for Empress, it was also the same for Sun Lang. The emperor's betrayal made the pain and betrayal Sun Lang suffer joke. So it was natural for him to feel angry, right? Therefore, he and Empress had a reason to take revenge together. So, they could join hands, right? Yes. It was just that everything was already different. You think that I will take this opportunity to set you up? Indeed, I will. I also think that you will take this opportunity to set me up. Indeed, you will. This so-called alliance is also an ugly deception. You want to achieve your goal, and I want to achieve mine. This is a fairly fair duel, Zhang Tai said with a smile. Sun Lang looked up at the sky. The sky in the capital was a little gloomy today, just like some people's mood. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Because I don't believe you anymore, because I have learned to lie to you." In the previous conversation, he had always concealed the most important information. He didn't reveal the Emperor's dream of immortality, nor did he reveal the Emperor's plan of possession. Not only that, he kept mentioning words like ghost father. A father's love is like a mountain. Your father dotes on you, arousing the disgust and anger of the emperor concubine towards the matter of infidelity. Thus, it strengthened her view and made the other party subconsciously believe that the emperor only had a sick and disgusting infatuation towards her. The layout, strategy, and exploitation had started a long time ago. The emperor didn't know that Sun Lang knew this secret. Empress also didn't know that Sun Lang knew this secret. Was there a greater advantage than this? Li Guanyin, after possessing your daughter, you are already dead, right? The death of a wise emperor is definitely a major event that shakes the world. With your sinister and ruthless personality, how could you let go of such a good opportunity? After all, you are a powerful emperor who defeated the sky demon and left your name in history. The crime of killing you is enough to make my name stink for 3,000 miles. You probably want to think of a way to make me a scapegoat. Sun Lang murmured, "It is indeed a brilliant plan, but I don't know if you have thought about it. If you are dead, then you are truly dead. How can a dead person fight with me?" He shook his head and walked toward the Copper Sparrow Terrace, facing the slightly cold wind. It really was a good show. True and false, schemes and betrayals, lies and exploitation. Those who were active on this stage were all ignorant people with their own desires and obsessions. Who would have a last laugh? "It must be me." Sun Lang narrowed his eyes. "You all have to die." In the first prince's residence, the difficult-to-choose student Li Jiansheng was still pondering. Wang Gui had already snapped 3 strands of his beard. He and Pei Zhu glanced at each other, and both of their eyes were filled with pain. His Highness had almost the same number of strengths and weaknesses, yet he still had to hesitate for such a long time on this matter. They really didn't know what would happen after he ascended the throne. But in all fairness, they also understood the first prince's hesitation and struggle. This kind of choice was very difficult for any prince, not to mention him, who had a soft personality. Just think about it. You are a prince who is not very outstanding. Your greatest strength is that you are the eldest son. In terms of talent, power, and prestige, you are far inferior to your younger sister. In some aspects, you can't even compare to your younger brother. Seeing that the battle for the position of crown prince has been in a stalemate every day, suddenly one day, a huge meat pie fell on your head. Your imperial father suddenly forcefully made you the crown prince, causing a huge uproar in the court. Various departments argued, ministers knocked on the door, and changes occurred in the inner palace. All kinds of pressure pressed down on your imperial father, but he still stubbornly refused to withdraw his decision. It was as if he had given all his fatherly love to you. Under such circumstances, 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 your imperial father, the emperor, is facing criticism from both the inner and outer court in order to protect your interests. You, the crown prince of the empire, the heir chosen by the emperor despite the pressure. At such a critical moment, he suddenly ran to collude with the empire's biggest traitor and became a traitor. Moreover, this traitor hit your father with a brick last night. Moreover, it was a fierce slap to his face. Many people heard this heavy and powerful slap. Logically speaking, the word deceitful wasn't enough to describe such an action. Li Jiansheng sighed bitterly. I still feel that this is too. Wang Gui and Pei Zhu were expressionless and didn't say anything. They actually wanted to say that this was completely normal and correct. This was because, for an emperor, it was normal to fall out with someone else. Look, although the emperor appointed you as the crown prince, his motives were unclear. Furthermore, your position as the crown prince wasn't stable either. Since you become the crown prince, it means that you're not far from the dragon throne. In order to become the emperor, you're not even afraid of killing your brothers, much less deceitfully deceitful, colluding with a traitor, borrowing his strength and support to gain a firm foothold in the imperial court, and becoming the crown prince. Was there a problem with this? There was no problem at all. Who knows? Maybe His Imperial Majesty will even be greatly comforted after learning of your actions. To be an emperor, one had to be so shameless. One had to cast aside such things as familial love, reverence, and conscience. One had to have the heart of a ruler who treated the common people as chess pieces. This was the true heart of an emperor. Of course, this was the logic behind it. However, how was he going to explain this to His Imperial Highness? If he said it out loud, His Imperial Highness would understand and use this move against him. Wouldn't that be a disaster? After waiting for a while, Wang Gui saw that the first prince still hadn't made a decision. He sighed inwardly. As expected of a cultured person, his methods were still quite wild. He said softly, "Your Imperial Highness, it's about time. Don't let Sun Lang wait too long. Otherwise, if the fake becomes real, and he uses this opportunity to cause trouble, then the situation will..." Jianxing's face twitched. He hesitated and said, Imperial Father won't blame me too much, right?" Pei Zhu couldn't bear to watch any longer. He shouted, "Your Imperial Highness." Looking at everyone's expressions, the first prince finally made his decision. "Then let's do it. I'm doing this for the sake of the country. I'm doing this for the sake of the country. And I have something to say even in front of Imperial Father." The tightly shut doors of the first prince's residence finally opened. In an instant, it attracted the attention of everyone in the imperial city. The first prince was pretending to be leaving the residence, bringing along his advisors. The group was majestic, and it looked like they were going to have a cat fight. Just as everyone was trying to figure out whether the first prince was going to the Office of Transmission, the 6 departments, or the Gate of Heaven Influence, someone was surprised to find that the route he was taking was a little strange. Then, something very shocking happened. The first prince, Jiansheng, the crown prince who was favored by his imperial majesty, was the central figure in today's political storm. While the internal and external courts were in a state of chaos, he opened the gates of his residence and led his subordinates out in a grandiose manner, the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. It was said that his father had entered a brothel. Chapter 1045. The autumn wind rustled and the sky was gloomy. There was a bone-piercing chill in the air. Facing the cold wind, Sun Lang shivered and tucked his hands into his sleeves. He lowered his head slightly, a smile on his lips as he slowly walked on the long and lonely road. People came and went along the way. The people of the capital continued their lives as usual. They ran, made a living, rested, and made noise. They focused on their work and their lives. The capital had always been a busy city. It was hard for busy people to find time. In a fast-paced life, no one would pay attention to where the person they passed by came from. Unless it was a beautiful woman, no one would take a second look. Therefore, the busy people naturally did not know that the inconspicuous young man walking through the busy city was actually a first-rank military officer. He was the most illustrious general in the Tianyuan army. Of course, that was only in the past. There was a faint smile on Sun Lang's face the whole time. It was the leisure and peace after being completely freed. He left his general uniform and printer in his room and changed into ordinary clothes. He carried a small bag on his back. Like all the young people who came to the capital with dreams, he looked up and sized up this strange and huge city. His face was filled with confusion and hope. The scenery along the way was very rare. However, he was different from others because he wanted to escape from this city. It was not easy to live in the capital. He used to be a patriot. There was no doubt about it. On the Tianyuan battlefield, he used his passion and sincerity to protect his country and its people. He fulfilled the mission of a professional soldier. Later on, the Sky Demon was destroyed and the Tianyuan army won. However, the responsibility of a soldier did not change. The stage of struggle changed from the battlefield to the court. He thought that he could protect this country as usual, just like he did before. But he was wrong. The court was different from a battlefield. There were more hidden arrows than open spears. Here, there was blood and no light from blades. The invincible general who once galloped on the battlefield was forced to pick up a pen and fight. This was not the strength of a martial artist. Moreover, the new enemy was even more difficult to deal with than the Sky Demon. It was the darkness that came from the depths of human nature. It was the ugliness and evil that was led by profit. It was deeply rooted in people's hearts and was very difficult to deal with. He was tired. He was really tired. Ever since he had returned to the capital, he had been fighting with countless malice and hostility. Qi Lianyan's provocations, the slander of the royalists, the Sky Demon hidden in the shadows of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, and the suspicions of the Son of Heaven had made him sigh. He was clearly doing the right thing, but everything around him felt like a stranger. The grand occasion of the Tianyuan era was no longer there, and a gap had already formed in the hearts of the people. Last night, in the Stellar Sword Palace, he had been shamelessly framed and slandered, and the one who had participated in this scheme was actually that esteemed sword saint of the kingdom. He did not understand. He was at a loss, and he was angry. He even wanted to gather all the officials and rush into the palace to confront the sword saint of the nation in front of the emperor. However, The special envoy from the palace brought the emperor's verbal order for him to consider the big picture, so he endured it. He was a soldier, and obedience was his duty. And what happened today was the last straw that broke the camel's back. The emperor's hasty appointment of the crown prince had shaken the court and caused the people to panic. This was clearly against the rules of etiquette, and before making this decision, the emperor had not discussed it with the court. This was clearly a random order. As a general of the court and the head of the military officials, he had an unshirkable duty to admonish the emperor and point out his mistakes. Therefore, he had been the first to knock on the door of the gate of heaven influence. He had not hesitated to offend the officials, and had used a forceful stance to force them to come to the imperial city to ask for the emperor's order. As long as it was something beneficial to the country, he would do it regardless of his life and death. He would not hesitate to advance or retreat because of his own gains and losses. He had adhered to his own creed. But a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. His Majesty turned a deaf ear to his request and only sent a eunuch to yell at them outside the gate of heaven influence, saying, "Are you trying to rebel?" It was the ultimate insult to the heroes of heaven's origin who fought against the extraterrestrial devils and defended their homeland. Even the hottest blood would turn cold in the end. He was completely disappointed. Standing outside the gate of heaven influence, the disappointed and sorrowful General Shansei seemed to be able to see the pair of eyes in the depths of the palace. The person sitting on the emperor's throne was sizing them up with the gaze of a venomous snake. His eyes were filled with suspicion and coldness. Yes, everything would change. Back then, the emperor and his officials had gotten along well, and the people were united. Now that the sky demon had been destroyed and the world was at peace, everything had vanished into thin air. Only a cold-blooded emperor was left. The sky demon had been destroyed, and the emperor no longer needed them. He did not need their advice, nor did he need their arguments. The emperor only needed obedient officials, obedient and sensible ministers. The emperor wanted the entire country to only have one voice. Since this is the case, I will take my leave. Completely disappointed, General Shansei chose to hang up his seal and leave. He had no duties, no mission, and no burden. He was dressed in plain clothes and walked on the streets of the imperial city. Looking at the scenery on both sides of the street and breathing in the fresh and free air, he felt unprecedentedly refreshed. He wanted to leave the city. He wanted to retire. Thinking of this, his slightly gloomy mood finally improved a little. He raised his head and breathed gently, imagining the beautiful life that would follow. Although he would not be a general, he still had his martial arts, strength, and ability. He could be a bodyguard, carry bricks, and farm. He could even go to the countryside and open a small martial arts school. Every day, he could teach some children with neither good nor bad talent martial arts to strengthen their bodies. The children would be limited by their talent, and their achievements would be limited. They might not be able to leave the town they lived in for the rest of their lives. But that would also be very, very good. He could be born in his hometown, live in his hometown, and die in his hometown. That would be very good. Of course, he could also not be a bodyguard, carry bricks, or farm instructor. Since he had retired from the army and was no longer a soldier, he would no longer be bound by the sense of discipline and the concept of honor and disgrace. He could show off his peerless beauty without any scruples. He could use his fatal charm as the love saint to capture the hearts of thousands of young girls. From then on, he could also wander around the forest and live off women. If that was the case, it seemed pretty good, he thought. It was time to pursue his own life, leaving the imperial city and heading to a wider world. But at that moment, his expression changed slightly. The ground beneath his feet trembled faintly. His long experience on the battlefield told him that a large number of horse caravans were approaching. Noise came from the distance. Sun Lang narrowed his eyes and slowly clenched his fists. A dangerous air slowly surged around him. "You won't let me go?" It looked like it was necessary to teach some people a lesson. A group of cavalry charged from the distance. The soldiers shouted loudly and drove away the pedestrians. Today, the emperor had appointed the crown prince. The undercurrents in the capital were surging. The people in the capital all felt the uneasy atmosphere and became particularly cautious and sensitive. When the cavalry suddenly arrived, they hurriedly retreated. The entire street was cleared away at the fastest speed. Only Sun Lang stood alone in the middle of the road, facing the cavalry that was charging towards him. Even if there were 100 times more, it would be useless, he thought. It looked like some people had really forgotten what he had relied on to become famous. Before he had become the commander of the army and planned strategies to fight against the Sky Demon, he had first made a name for himself on the front lines of the battlefield by breaking through enemy lines, killing generals, and sieging cities. But very quickly, his calm and cold gaze turned to shock. "His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince?" he asked in surprise. "Why have you come?" He was indeed very confused because the person leading the caravan was the great prince, Jiansheng. Today, Jiansheng had been abruptly appointed as the crown prince by the emperor. It could be said that he had stepped into the mouth of a storm. All kinds of doubts and criticism surged in. No matter what, he had picked up a great bargain. At this time, he should have kept quiet and made a great fortune. Closing his door and keeping silent was the best choice. But at this time, he had led a large group of people and horses to run wild on the streets. So, Sun Lang was angry. He frowned and said in a stern voice, "What is your highness doing? His Majesty has appointed the crown prince, and the court is in turmoil. All the powers in the capital are paying attention to you. They are all examining whether you, as the future crown prince, have the tolerance and aptitude of a ruler. You did not close your door at home and refuse guests, nor did you go to the gate of heaven influence to argue for what is right. Instead, you rode your horse on the streets and acted domineeringly. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who had rolled off his horse from afar and was walking quickly over, did not show any anger or embarrassment when he was scolded. His expression was solemn. He held a heavy official's robe in his hands. There was a large seal on the robe. He came to Sun Lang, knelt down, and raised the official's robe and seal high up. He said in a low voice, "I have come for the general." Sun Lang turned pale with fright and hurriedly helped him up. "His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, please don't do this. Please get up." Originally, with Sun Lang's martial arts, even if Li Jianxing used his internal energy to resist, he could still forcefully help him up. He could even throw his Imperial Highness the Crown Prince directly into orbit, let alone help him up. However, although Sun Lang tried to help him up, his Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was still kneeling on the ground and did not move at all. It was too strange. Perhaps Li Jiansheng was hiding his terrifying cultivation that was comparable to the 7 luminary sword saint, so he could resist Sun Lang's help. This person's thoughts were deep and terrifying. In short, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was still kneeling on the ground and preparing his lines. Sun Lang was shocked and helpless. He understood the purpose of His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince's visit. He was touched and sighed. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince insisted on kneeling. As an official, he could not just stand in front of His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, so he also knelt down. Of course, because they were far away, the onlookers could not see clearly. Seeing this, Li Jinxing's eyes twitched. He lowered his voice and said, "General, do you really want to take advantage of me?" Sun Lang still maintained the complicated expression that a loyal official who was disheartened by the emperor and was about to resign and return to his hometown was sincerely urged to stay by the crown prince. A few words came out from between his teeth. "Stop talking nonsense. You are the one who is taking advantage of me. I am helping you to increase your reputation. Hurry up." Li Jianchang snorted, but he knew that Sun Lang was telling the truth. On the way here, he had heard Wang Ge and Pei Zhu analyze the cause and effect for him. As the crown prince, if he wanted to secure his position as the crown prince and prevent his father from removing him as he wished, other than winning the support of the power of the imperial court, the support of the people was also very important. This was a show he was putting on right now. He was at the heart of the struggle and should not have come out. However, when he heard that an important official had resigned and was returning to his hometown, he risked a great responsibility to urge him to stay. He did not want to see a hero be lonely and the country lose its virtue. This kind of courage and responsibility could increase his reputation to the max. Was there a better opportunity to put on a show than this? Thus, he took a deep breath and said loudly, "General, you are an unparalleled scholar in the Empress Tugon city. The imperial court cannot do without you. Please do not leave." Sun Lang's expression was sorrowful. He sighed softly and said, "Your Highness, please allow me to report. I'm already physically and mentally exhausted and have no strength to support the country. Every generation produces talented people. Without me, Sun Lang, there will be others." "General," His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince said emotionally, "you are not even 30 years old yet. You are in the prime of your life. The Empire needs your protection. The country is waiting for you to make greater achievements. Why do you want to leave at this time? Could it be because of my matter?" Sun Lang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Your Highness, don't think too much. I do not have any prejudice or dissatisfaction with your Highness. Today, when I came to the palace to ask for orders, I was only discussing the matter as it was. Your Majesty did not discuss it with the outside court before hastily appointing the Crown Prince. This is not in accordance with the rules of etiquette." Li Jiancheng said softly, "I know. General, you are a very loyal official." Sun Lang looked at him in surprise. "Oh, I didn't know that this grandson's acting skills were really good. He could even say such words." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince then looked sad, but his tone was very firm. "Although I don't know why my father wants to appoint me as the Crown Prince, although I am not fully confident that I can be a good Crown Prince, but since my father has chosen me, it means that he trusts me. As his son, as his official, I will not betray his trust. Since he has decided to entrust the country and the people to me, I will do my best to bear them." Speaking till here, Crown Prince Jiancheng sincerely looked into Sun Lang's eyes. "Therefore, Commander-in-Chief, please do not leave. Perhaps there are some imperfections in this country. Perhaps there are too many unsatisfactory things in the court, but this is the reason for my generation to fight. This country needs you. I also need your support and help." Speaking of this, Li Jiancheng had a strange feeling in his heart. He clearly knew in his heart that these words were just carefully fabricated lies for others to hear. But after personally saying these high-sounding words, his mood also became agitated and happy. He looked left and right out of the corner of his eyes and saw pairs of eyes. After the spectators who didn't know the truth heard what he said, they all revealed expressions of shock and approval. In their hearts, they must be praising this prince. They must feel that this prince will be a good crown prince and even a good monarch. It was only a few lies, but it could achieve such an effect. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had a flash of understanding. So, whether one could be a good crown prince or even an emperor, the most effective trick was to lie. Chapter 1046. In short, it was a performance that left a deep impression on everyone. A general who was physically and mentally exhausted and determined to leave, and His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who was thirsty for talent and had a sense of responsibility. These two people had put on a touching performance on the streets of the imperial capital. It highlighted that one of them was loyal to his country and his people, and was simply the last conscience of the empire. As the main character of this drama, Sun Lang had a subtle feeling that he was fabricating history. At least for now, this was just a performance, a show, or even a farce. Not only did he and the people from the first prince's residence know this, but the people in the imperial capital could also see this. All of this was just Sun Lang's way of messing up the situation, finding allies, and making His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince famous. However, Mr. Husher, who liked to play cards, had once said that history was like a little girl lying down and doing whatever she wanted. "All right, please lie down, Mr. Hu." "Indeed, you didn't say this." Even the phrase, "history is like a little girl lying down and doing whatever she wants," was not said by you, but this logic was similar. Today, it seemed like an extremely ironic farce, but if it was passed down by word of mouth, recorded in the history books, passed down by the people, written on paper, made into a drama, and even spread to the world, then after a few hundred years, this would undoubtedly be an ironclad fact. Even the most rigorous historians would take this matter seriously. Because today's outstanding figures, today's love and hatred, and today's surging winds and clouds would eventually disappear with time, forever annihilated with the passing of a generation. In the end, it would become a few words stingily written by the historians, who would know what had happened in the past. People in the future would only remember that it was the talented and bold crown Prince Jiansheng who took a huge risk to retain General Shunsei, showing his great talent and broad mind. Even thousands of years later, there would be a drama to reflect the situation today. It would be called Jiansheng Chases Shunsei on a Long Street or something. The premise was that student Li Jiansheng could smoothly become the emperor and not be shot to death by that person's arrow. Oh no, it doesn't matter even if he is shot to death. In any case, I will definitely win in the end. A tragic hero is also a hero. Sun Lang revealed a meaningful smile. In front of him, Crown Prince Li Jiansheng, who had pretended to be sad, also revealed a gratified expression as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Of course, this was only an act. Sun Lang could still see the uneasiness in the depths of his eyes. Under Sun Lang's instigation and the advice of his aides, he finally did so. Less than 2 hours after his father appointed him as the crown prince, he got together with the biggest traitor in the empire. His father was still in the imperial palace, facing the protests and accusations from the imperial palace and the imperial palace. He turned around and trapped his father. He knew his father's temperament and knew that he might face the wrath of his father. So of course he was panicking. Seeing this, Sun Lang naturally had to comfort him. So he said, "What's done can't be undone. What's done can't be undone even if you regret it. Are you going to run back and beg him to forgive you? That's impossible. You know his temperament. He won't forgive you, so it's better to be with me. Didn't you feel very happy just now?" Li Jiansheng blinked. "That sounds a bit wrong. That's the tone of a yellow-haired person. I can tell at a glance that you haven't listened to my book." Sun Lang changed to a way that the other party could understand. "What I mean is, since you have become a traitor, with your father's suspicious and cruel temperament, I'm afraid he won't believe you anymore. So it's useless for you to go back and admit your mistake. Instead, it will make him look down on you. The only thing you can do now is to collude with me. No, it's to be congenial. Let's join hands and do something earth-shattering." This way of saying was not as good as the previous one. Li Jiansheng's eyes became even more sorrowful. He sighed, "I always feel that I've been tricked by you. We're just taking what we need. You have to know what you're doing." Sun Lang said indifferently, "Do you see those people around you? Use them well. Then mobilize your subordinates' water army to spread today's story. Then you, Crown Prince Jiansheng, will have established a courageous and eager character. The next step is to continue to strengthen this character." Jiansheng was not stupid. His tone was a bit colder. "What about you? What about your benefits?" Sun Lang blinked and said in surprise, "You want to give me benefits?" Li Jiansheng took a deep breath. He was not used to dealing with people like Sun Lang. He rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "What I mean is, are you so busy just to make a name for me? You must have your own ideas. What do you want to achieve with this?" Sun Lang's eyes widened, and he complained, "How can you accuse people of nothing? We had a clear agreement before. You helped me arrange the marriage with your sister, and I helped you gain a foothold in the imperial court. Now, you haven't fulfilled the agreement, and I'm helping you enthusiastically. It's fine if you're not touched by such noble sentiments, but you're actually doubting my intentions?" Jiansheng sneered. "Are you so kind? Aren't you afraid that I'll turn my back on you?" Sun Lang was shocked. "Oh, I really forgot. Your Li family has such good genes. From your father to your sister, everyone is good at shameless backstabbing. I've suffered more than once, so I should be on guard. Sigh, look at me. I don't have a memory at all. I'm so simple and honest, but I'm bullied by you city people all day." Li Jianxing looked at him with an expressionless face. There was no fluctuation in his heart, and he even wanted to laugh. Even though Sun Lang had said such words, He did not dare to do anything that would make him lose his footing, because the other party's eyes were faint, revealing an aura that made him wary. Just like that, he watched his every move, as if he had long been prepared, as if he had calculated all his actions in his heart. He did not believe in the nonsense of "I really forgot." He knew that if he really did go back on his word, then Sun Lang was completely prepared to deal with it. He could even directly knock him down from the clouds. It was just a kind of intuition. He knew that Sun Lang must have such an arrangement. So he laughed. "I'm just joking. Who in the world doesn't know that you're open and above board, and that you keep your promises? I'm also a person of honor, and I'm willing to be friends with the general." Sun Lang also laughed very straightforwardly. The Crown Prince is indeed the Crown Prince, with the appearance of a ruler. On the surface, it was a compliment, but in reality, it was mockery. The two of them quietly mocked each other, and then pretended to hold hands and look at each other, as if they had met in victory. Acting had to be done completely, because the real audience was still watching from the shadows. The cooperation between General Shansei and His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had only just begun. Now, they were rushing to an even bigger stage to announce one thing to the people involved in the dispute over the Crown Prince. The two of them were in cahoots. So Sun Lang laughed loudly. Good, good. Just because of your Highness' courtesy and responsibility, I'm willing to stand on guard for the Empire again. I once doubted that your Majesty's hasty appointment of the Crown Prince was appropriate. But today, I feel like old friends with the Crown Prince, and I know that your Majesty has great foresight. But now, the outside court is in turmoil, and there are officials who are kowtowing to requests for orders. There are endless voices of opposition and doubt. Sun Lang is not talented, but I dare to trouble your Highness to send me to the gate of Heaven Influence to meet the officials. Li Jiansheng smiled on the surface, but his heart was shaken. Go to the gate of Heaven Influence to quarrel with the officials? Why did he still have to go? He thought of the argument between Pei Zhu and Wang Gui, and his difficulty in making a decision arose again. He said in a low voice, "This is different from what we agreed on. You helped me secure the position of Crown Prince, so why do you still want me to stand out?" Sun Lang said impatiently, "Are you joking? If you don't stand out, you still want to secure the position of Crown Prince? Don't tell me that if I run to the gate of Heaven Influence and shout something like, 'Let Mr. Jiansheng succeed to the position of Crown Prince,' the officials will accept it without hesitation? They haven't even seen you yet, so you should at least take responsibility, right?" Li Jiansheng said indignantly. "Back then, Mr. Pei also advised me to directly go to the gate of Heaven Influence to accept the questioning of the officials and stand upright in front of everyone. In other words, I could have done this on my own. Since that's the case, why do I still need you? What's the point of our agreement and deal?" Sun Lang looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said slowly, "Isn't the point obvious? Without our agreement and deal, if you were to run to the gate of Heaven Influence, I would definitely make you lose all face in front of all the officials and make you the laughingstock of the capital. Do you believe me?" This reason was too strong, to the point that Crown Prince Jiansheng was speechless. This kind of "if you don't cooperate with me, I'll make trouble for you" threat was like a hooligan's, and only he could say it out loud. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was helpless, and finally revealed a graceful smile. "Commander-in-Chief, please." The performance was finally over. Jiansheng's subordinates were all brought out. This was a show of courtesy and respect. Everyone had read the script, so other than sighing at Sun Lang's despicable methods and perfect acting skills, they didn't have any other opinions. They had a hard time watching. After all, it was really a very uncomfortable thing to see a shameless guy crying and spreading rumors. Just now, who knew how many things Sun Lang had said that had distorted the truth? Apart from ridiculing the emperor, he had also molded himself into a white lotus who was wholeheartedly devoted to the country and had suffered all kinds of grievances. It was simply disgusting. On the other side, Sun Lang and His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince came side by side. Everyone bowed in unison, and General Shansei greeted everyone warmly as if nothing had happened in the prince's residence. His skin was so thick that even a sacred sword wouldn't be able to pierce through it. Wang Gui and Sun Lang chatted warmly, their words beating around the bush, as if confirming some of the things he had guessed and deduced. Unfortunately, when it came to speaking skills, he was completely no match for Sun Lang, and was easily deflected by General Shansei. Pei Ju, on the other hand, looked on coldly from the side. He was extremely wary of Sun Lang. The first prince's residence's cavalry escorted the core members of the prince's residence as they set off for the gate of heaven influence. The story of what had happened on the long street spread as quickly as possible. Very quickly, the important figures all received an important piece of news that was enough to affect the current situation. Sun Lang had the intention of supporting the crown prince. Some people thought for a moment and thought that they had seen through Sun Lang's intentions and thoughts. Sun Lang and the emperor were on bad terms, and the emperor had hastily appointed an heir. Prince Jianxing's position as heir to the throne was unstable. Sun Lang had stepped out to support Prince Jianxing, and Prince Jianxing had accepted. This series of actions had actually led to the alliance between the two. His own crown prince had colluded with his greatest enemy. For the emperor, this was completely unacceptable. His suspicion and dissatisfaction with Prince Jianxing was obvious. Thus, if His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince wanted to continue to stand firm, he had to deepen his cooperation with Sun Lang. Sun Lang could also, logically, support His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince to oppose the Emperor and fight for the future of this country. To be able to discover the opportunity as soon as the Emperor appointed an heir and act decisively. Furthermore, to be able to brazenly succeed under the circumstances where no one could react, and then expand the results of the battle with lightning speed to consolidate his advantage. This was, without a doubt, the style of a commander of war. No one knew how the emperor would feel. Even more people threw their cups to the ground. Because this was a battle for the throne, Sun Lang brazenly intervened and greatly changed the balance of power. It even made the measures that those who had bet on the wrong side had prepared to stop their losses completely lose effect. However, Sun Lang didn't care. He and His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince and his group majestically returned to the Gate of Heaven Influence. The officials gathered outside the Gate of Heaven Influence looked as if they had eaten *T F***CK, your mother, who was the one who made a fuss and wanted to knock on the gate to protest. It was you, who was the one who shamelessly shouted and forced us to participate in your demonstration. It was you, who was the one who shouted enough, who was the one who ran away and left us here. It was you. It was fine if you were like this, but one moment you were opposing the emperor's appointment of the crown prince, and the next moment you were colluding with the crown prince. Furthermore, you swaggered in front of us. Even the prostitutes in the brothel couldn't change their faces as quickly as you. Faced with the wolf-like gazes of the crowd, Sun Lang smiled foolishly and rubbed his head. I know that many of my friends are puzzled and confused. I also know that some of you are cursing me in your hearts, he said sincerely. It doesn't matter. You can curse me. You can even curse me out loud in front of me. Don't worry, I won't remember your names. Please rest assured. There was a moment of speechless silence, because the lackeys of General Shansei, scattered in the crowd, were holding small notebooks, their sharp gazes sweeping back and forth. Some of them were officials from the Bureau of Rights and mad dogs from the censorate. Both of them recognized all the officials in the capital and were renowned for their shrewd eyes, vicious gazes, and superb memories. So no one is dissatisfied with me? This son is truly ashamed. Everyone has misjudged me. Sun Lang revealed a moved expression. I would like to let my brothers know that this little brother truly was disheartened and wanted to resign and leave the capital. However, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who had received the news and hurried over to stop me. His Highness was at the heart of the storm today and should have remained behind closed doors to wait for the competition in the court to come to a conclusion. However, for this son's matter, He left his residence and shouldered an enormous responsibility to persuade me to stay. I'm very grateful. Although public and private matters should be separated clearly, the first prince truly displayed the responsibility and courage that a crown prince should have. I feel that it is not impossible for him to be the crown prince. When Sun Lang said this, he revealed a sincere smile. What do you guys think? Chapter 1047. The event outside the gate of heaven influence had already turned into a large-scale performance. The general of divine strategies and the crown prince stood side by side. They looked elegant and graceful, as if they were supporting the two of them. As soon as Sun Lang finished speaking, Crown Prince Jiansheng immediately followed up. Although he had difficulty making decisions and was always hesitant, this matter concerned the throne. He was not stupid. Now that Sun Lang was speaking up for him, it was the best time to bravely forge ahead. How could he let go of this opportunity? He took a step forward, bowed to the crowd, and said in a deep voice, Jiansheng has neither virtue nor ability to receive Imperial Father's favor and to be appointed as the Crown Prince. I am truly fearful. However, as a son, filial piety is the most important. As a subject, loyalty is the most important. Although Jiansheng is not talented, he still has the ambition to rule the world and protect the people. Today, Imperial Father has decreed that the position of Crown Prince shall belong to me. Today, I will speak of my life's ambition in front of all of you. I ask for everyone's help. There was nothing wrong with what he said. It sounded very beautiful, and there was nothing wrong with it. After all, it was Pei Ju, the gunslinger, who had thought of it for him, and Wang Gui had polished it for him. If these two disagreeable thinkers came up with a solution, it would definitely be the best solution among the best. However, there was also a flaw in it. Pei Ju's personality was like a raging fire, and his way of doing things was grand and domineering. Even his declaration was full of heroism. However, although this speech was grand and imposing, it did not match Crown Prince Jiansheng's usual personality and character. After all, he had previously been a virtuous prince. However, this did not matter because the content of this speech was not important. No one was a pedant, so they would not go over the words in detail. The most important issue was the current situation. There was also the man behind Jiansheng. No, beside him. The general of divine strategies, Sun Lang, was the central figure in the recent upheaval in the imperial court. He had single-handedly directed the knocking on the imperial palace and gathered a large number of officials. After that, he had turned it into a fan handshake event for the first prince. In other words, he was supporting the first prince and trying to profit from the crown prince. With his reputation, connections, and power in the court, once he reached a comprehensive strategic cooperation agreement with His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who had a firm foothold, it meant that he had seized the opportunity of the court's layout for the next 50 years. After the Crown Prince succeeded the throne, he could even seize a large amount of political benefits in one go, and it would not be a problem for him to dominate the court. If that's the case, what are we playing for? No, of course not. If it had been anything else, it would have been fine. However, this was a battle for the throne, and it was a battle for the next 50 years of the nation's fate. Whoever backed down would have to wait for their whole family to eat dirt in the future. After all, Iriri and Yakina had learned a painful lesson from Seiji's and Yukina's painful lesson. There was no such thing as tears. Therefore, even if they were afraid of Sun Lang's methods and Li Jiansheng's little shoes, they still had to say what they had to say. Immediately, someone said ambiguously, General Shunsei, when you knocked on the palace gate, you were impassioned and directly admonished the royal family. In order to ask His Majesty to retract his order and carefully appoint the crown prince, you did not hesitate to disregard your official position, reputation, and even life and death. I really admire you. But now, in the blink of an eye, you changed your mind and decided to support Prince Jiansheng. You are really unpredictable. Sun Lang turned to look at the crowd with a gentle smile and calm eyes. When his eyes met, The officials standing in front obediently moved to the sides, revealing the speaker behind the crowd. When that person saw Sun Lang looking at him, he was also shocked. After all, this guy was really fierce and could not be underestimated. Thinking of all the things this guy had done before, facing his kind gaze now, he was really stressed. However, he still forced himself to stay upright and stubbornly looked Sun Lang in the eye. He thought to himself, although this person is fierce, this is in front of the palace gates. All the officials are watching. Can he kill me with one punch? Today, if I have a little upper hand in this debate with him, it will be a grand event that will stir up the court. Many leaders will definitely think highly of me. After all, the early bird gets the worm. As he was thinking, he heard Sun Lang laugh and say, "Friend, which prince do you belong to?" That person's heart skipped a beat, and then he said coldly, "General Shunsei, what do you mean? I don't belong to any prince. I am a minister of His Majesty." Sun Lang tilted his head and said, "Since you are a minister of His Majesty, why don't you accept the crown prince appointed by His Majesty? Friend, you're not very loyal." Speaking of this, he shouted again, "Lord One, is Lord One Quan Fu here? I heard that you are His Majesty's personal little cotton-padded jacket and his most loyal dog. Why don't you come out to greet the young master?" When Quan Fu, who was in the crowd, was glanced at for no reason, he only felt that all kinds of people were looking at him, and his heart was full of anger. Damn it, why am I involved again? He had the heart to stand out and angrily rebuke Sun Lang, but then he suddenly realized, that's right, this little bastard is deliberately provoking me to come out and make a fuss in order to muddy the waters. I can't be used by him. The man who spoke up for justice also saw Sun Lang's sinister intention and immediately said, "General Shunsei, why did Lord Wen suddenly do this?" Sun Lang showed a look of sudden realization, and then he said apologetically, "I see. I mentioned Lord Wen's name. Did it make you feel uncomfortable physically? I'm sorry. I didn't know that you would vomit when you heard Wen Quan Fu's name. I don't know what hatred you have with him. Damn it, I didn't mean that." The man who spoke up for justice seemed to have felt the friendly gaze from Lord Wen in the crowd, and a trace of cold sweat slid down his forehead. He realized that he had underestimated Sun Lang's ability to stir up trouble. He immediately remedied, "I respect Lord Wen very much, and I definitely didn't mean that. What I mean is, General Shunsei is discussing with me. Why are you involving Lord Wen?" Sun Lang said seriously, "Oh, about this, I mentioned Lord Wen as an example. You see, you claim to be His Majesty's subject, but you refuse to admit that His Majesty appointed the crown prince. I think you are very disloyal. In order to prove this point, I want to call out the real loyal subject, Lord Wen Quan Fu, to see his attitude towards His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. You said that there was no need, and it seems that you also think that Lord Wen is disloyal." The man almost vomited blood. Only by facing Sun Lang in person could he understand how difficult it was to deal with this person. He was the incarnation of the concept of pestering endlessly, and you had to play along with him. What else could you do? Wow, the strongest person in the world was talking to you nicely, and you still wanted to flip the table? He swallowed his anger, but he also knew that he could not follow Sun Lang's rhythm. So he quickly said, "General Shunsei, you are wrong. It is because I am His Majesty's subject that there are things that I should do and things that I should not do. For example, His Majesty's appointment of the Crown Prince was very hasty and did not conform to the rules of etiquette. As subjects, I should stand up and remonstrate." Sun Lang nodded happily. "That is right, but I have a question that I would like to ask you." The man was alert and said, "Please speak." Sun Lang said casually, "I wonder why you are against His Majesty's appointment of the Crown Prince." The man replied, "Of course it is because His Majesty appointed the Crown Prince in haste and did not discuss it with the outside court. It does not conform to the rules of etiquette." Sun Lang continued to ask, "Sir, why do you think that His Majesty needs to discuss it with the outside court? Do you think that you are qualified to interfere with the selection of the Crown Prince? Do you want to decide who the Crown Prince is?" That person said in horror. This was a fatal question. "Of course not. Of course not." Sun Lang asked, "Then why?" Since you do not want to interfere with the selection of the crown prince, why do you insist that His Majesty should discuss it with the outside court? What's the point of this? Without waiting for the man to answer, he answered himself. The answer is very simple. Although His Majesty is a wise person, he is still alone. There will be times when he does not think thoroughly and makes mistakes. The reason why His Majesty is asked to discuss the matter of the crown prince with the outside court is because the subjects are responsible for the country and want to examine it for His Majesty, right? The man stammered, Yes, yes. The surrounding ministers showed a helpless expression. Damn, they were not on the same level at all. Seeing that the man had fallen into Sun Lang's rhythm, they, as observers, could see clearly. However, no one spoke out to remind him, and no one stepped forward to help, because they had vaguely guessed Sun Lang's argument. And at the moment, they could not think of a way to deal with it. Since they could not deal with it, jumping out was just asking for humiliation and looking for trouble. Although there was a saying, the early riser gets the bird to eat. Bah, the early riser gets the worm to eat. But sometimes, the early bird doesn't get to eat the worm, but gets to eat the bullet instead. General Shinsei on the other side had already raised a steel gun. Sun Lang showed a gentle smile and said patiently, So, everyone jumped out to oppose His Majesty's order to appoint the crown prince because they were worried that His Majesty would hastily appoint an unwise prince, which could very well ruin the country. In other words, if this prince is wise enough, then there is no need to oppose, right? The man seemed to wake up from a dream and found that he had fallen into Sun Lang's trap. His head was covered in cold sweat, and he still struggled to struggle. This is not right. Etiquette is also very important. No matter how wise the prince is, His Majesty cannot directly appoint him without going over the court. This is not right. Ah, you're a supporter of procedural justice, but it doesn't matter. I think procedural justice and resultant justice can sometimes coexist. Sun Lang walked forward with a smile and patted the man's shoulder. In other words, if His Majesty convenes a court meeting at this time to discuss the matter of the crown prince with the court outside and acts in accordance with etiquette, then, brother, you will have no objections and will fully support Prince Jiansheng to be the crown prince, right? The man felt as if he had fallen into a dream. He stuttered, I am not. No. Sun Lang was agitated and said, What do you mean? Didn't you say that you were only against His Majesty's actions not being in accordance with etiquette? Why did His Majesty give you procedural justice? And now you are going to oppose Prince Jiansheng? What do you mean? Do you think His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince is not wise enough? Prince Jiansheng very cooperatively turned his head to look at him. Although his eyes were not as kind as Sun Lang's, it was almost the same. After all, he was the eldest son of the royal family. He more or less had the aura of a king. Moreover, no matter how people protested, His Majesty still gave the order. In other words, regardless of whether the position of the crown prince was stable or not, Li Jiansheng was indeed the person closest to the highest power in the empire. It was very likely that he would become His Majesty in the future. If the future His Majesty looked at you with a gaze that said, I will remember you, would you not panic? The man was already feeling regretful at this time. He was just about to refute, but Sun Lang didn't have any intention of playing a turn-based game with him. F***ck your mother. My speed is so high. Who wants to play with you? One combo and I'll die. So General Shinsei pursued. Brother, your position is very strange. At first, you were only concerned about the matter, not the person. You only felt that there was a problem with His Majesty's procedure of appointing the crown prince. When the procedure was fixed, you began to question the choice of the crown prince. But you can't say His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince is not wise. What do you want to do? He pretended to think and then suddenly understood. He said loudly, I understand. You are opposing for the sake of opposing. You just don't want His Majesty to be satisfied, right? My mother told me that all the treacherous officials who like to cheat are like this. You just want to oppose His Majesty. The man said anxiously, I don't. Sun Lang shouted, No? Then what do you mean? You can't say what is wrong with Crown Prince Jiansheng, and you don't want to support him. We are all in a difficult position. Could it be that you feel that His Majesty's procedure of appointing the Crown Prince is wrong? And to show that His Majesty is wrong, you not only deny His Majesty's procedure, but also deny His Majesty's results? For such selfish reasons, you exclude the Crown Prince, who has done nothing wrong, from being the Crown Prince. This is too much of a bitch. He pointed at the man and shouted, "No matter which possibility it is, it can only mean one thing. You are not loyal. I told you I can't be wrong. You and Lord Wen Quanfu are the same. Both of you say one thing, but do another. You are a traitor. No wonder you respect him so much." During this time, Lord Wen had been hit by many stray bullets, and his anger bar was rising steadily. At this time, he finally could not hold back and jumped out to shout, "Sun Lang, how dare you slander me behind my back and insult my reputation?" Sun Lang was overjoyed. He looked as if he had finally caught a big fish. He casually pushed aside the man who had been fooled to the point of doubting his own life and greeted Wen Quanfu warmly. "Lord Wen is actually here. Then come and tell everyone that Crown Prince Jiansheng is going to succeed the throne. Are you going to support him or not?" The person just now was just a small fry. At most, he would make a show of strength and make an example of the others. Lord Wen, as the backbone of the Royalist Party, was a big fish among big fish. Only then did Wen Quanfu come to his senses. After all, he had drunk Sun Lang's foot-washing water. He was very worried, not because Sun Lang was difficult to deal with, but because His Majesty's thoughts were unclear. Logically speaking, when His Majesty appointed the Crown Prince, whether the procedure was right or wrong, the Royalists should unconditionally support His Majesty's decision. But on Sun Lang's side, he interfered and supported everyone. He was a traitor who opposed His Majesty all day long. If he supported His Majesty, should everyone continue to support him? Should they oppose him? That was the most troublesome part. His Majesty's heart was hard to fathom. Wen Quanfu was very hesitant. He looked in the direction of the palace gate and talked a lot, half-heartedly stalling for time. Based on his understanding of His Majesty would definitely not allow Sun Lang to continue. As expected, after a dull sound, the gate of heaven influence opened again. Chapter 1048. Earlier, when Sun Lang was howling outside the palace, a eunuch had come out. Unfortunately, the eunuch was a small fry. He only knew how to rely on his woman's power to shout things like, "Are you going to rebel?" It was enough to scare the officials who had no background, but when faced with a thorn like Sun Lang, the eunuch was no match at all. This time, the posture was much more solemn. The palace gate opened wide, and the guards led the way. The eunuchs carried golden swords and silver knives, as well as imperial weapons such as axes, halberds, to show the majesty and the supreme authority of the imperial family. Eunuch Feng Yongting, the favorite of the imperial court, strode out with a bright yellow silk cloth in his hands. He was serious in speech and manner, and his face was murderous. The officials present were all experienced in their work. Seeing this posture, their hearts thumped. His Majesty was going to be serious about this matter. However, they quickly relaxed. After all, Sun Lang was the mastermind. If anything happened, he would take care of it. Seeing this, Wen Quanfu sneered. His guess was right. The emperor could not sit still. Moreover, looking at the situation, Sun Lang was bound to suffer a loss today. Just as he was about to say something sarcastic, he heard Sun Lang say, "Ayaya, this posture, could it be? Haha, congratulations, Lord Wen." "Congratulations, Lord Wen," Wen Quanfu said coldly. "Where did the congratulations come from?" Sun Lang winked and said, "Looking at this situation, the emperor is going to be serious. Lord Wen, after painstaking efforts, you have finally tricked the imperial staff. Now this fragrant plate of stir-fried pork with bamboo shoots has been handed to you. You are about to taste it. Isn't this a great thing?" Wen Quanfu snorted, "Nonsense. Lord Sun, this imperial staff is clearly coming for you. You should think about what to do next. Should I openly rebel and disrespect His Majesty's authority, or should I calmly accept the punishment and lose face in front of my colleagues. Martial arts were prevalent in Hutu, and even the civil officials were very good at fighting. Under such a system, corporal punishment like the ting caning was a bit awkward. It should be known that most of the officials had practiced external martial arts, such as the iron cloth. Their muscles and bones were strong, and their true chi was vigorous. Breaking a big stone on their chest was child's play, and the chrysanthemum electric drill was the basic skill. When the ting caning hit the body, it was almost like scratching an itch. However, there were two problems. Firstly, the official receiving the flogging was highly skilled in martial arts, and the executioner in charge of the flogging was not someone to be trifled with. Furthermore, the official receiving the flogging was to show his unyielding and indomitable spirit. If nothing happened to him after receiving the flogging, but the executioner suffered internal injuries, then it would be an accident. Therefore, masochists who were beaten by Ding, you would have to remove their chi protection and allow themselves to be beaten. If they were beaten until their flesh was badly mangled and they couldn't move, it would appear that the adults were unyielding and unafraid of violence. Secondly, it was embarrassing. Regardless of whether they could hurt you or not, it was already embarrassing to be beaten outside the palace gates. No matter how you refuted afterwards, this represented that the imperial power was forcefully humiliating you, and it couldn't be washed clean. Therefore, when Quan Fu planned to watch a joke here, didn't Sun Lang claim to be a loyal official? Didn't you want to support His Majesty's decree? But you roared in the imperial city, gathered the officials, and mocked the eunuchs. These were all solid evidence of your crimes. These crimes weren't big, but they weren't small either. A flogging was just right for you. Then the question was, would you accept the flogging? If you didn't, you would be disrespecting the emperor and disrespecting the imperial power. If you accepted the flogging, you would be beaten in front of everyone. Even if you used your chi to protect yourself and even made the executioner vomit blood, it was still a flogging. It was equivalent to you admitting defeat and lowering your head to His Majesty. Therefore, what would you do? Sun Lang's expression changed when he heard this. He suddenly glared and said sternly, "Wait. How did Lord Wen know that they were here to flog me? You're not a eunuch, and you're not in the palace. Why did you conclude that I would be flogged by His Majesty before the decree was announced? Could it be that you slandered me? Could it be that you bribed the eunuchs?" Lord Wen didn't pay attention, and a pot of sh*t of colluding with the palace was put on his head. He said angrily, "Nonsense! You roared in the imperial city today, knocked on the palace gates, and caused a ruckus. If His Majesty didn't hit you, who would he hit?" Sun Lang shouted. "Then what did Lord Wen come here for? You also had a part in knocking on the palace gates. Why did you conclude that His Majesty would only hit me and not you? His Majesty would never do such an unfair thing, unless someone slandered you. Tell me, what kind of despicable thing did you do?" "I was King dragged here by you." "Damn it." Just as when Quan Fu was about to curse, Sun Lang turned his head and ignored him. He looked at Feng Yongting and said, "Eunuch Feng, you tell me, is it really as this shameless old thief said, that His Majesty would only flog me?" Feng Yongting looked at him coldly and opened the scroll in his hand. Imperial Decree. There were two types of imperial decrees. The first type had been reviewed by the imperial court and was called an imperial decree. It had the highest administrative order and had the highest priority. The other type was directly issued from the imperial city and was called an imperial decree. If the emperor was weak and the ministers were strong, then the imperial decree's execution would be awkward. The more powerful ministers could even openly say things like, "This imperial decree is the imperial decree, and I will not accept the imperial decree," and the emperor could do nothing about it. However, the empire was in a situation where the emperor was strong and the ministers were strong. If one were to look deeper, the emperor was stronger. After all, he was the strong ruler who won the war of Tianyuan. Everyone had to give him some face. That was why the emperor's decree to appoint a crown prince had caused a huge uproar in the imperial court. It was not treated as waste paper by the ministers and was not taken seriously. In the hands of a strong emperor, imperial decrees had great power and authority. Once the imperial decree was issued, the ministers gathered outside the gate of heaven influence all knelt down. Even the crown prince was no exception. Sun Lang took a step forward without leaving a trace and stood in front of Wen Quanfu. He put on a fake smile and said, "Lord Wen, why aren't you kneeling down to receive the imperial decree?" His movement was very coquettish. If Lord Wen knelt down, it would be no different from kneeling in front of Sun Lang. As a Shinsei general, he actually dared to play such a child's game. How shameless! Lord Wen was furious. "Why aren't you kneeling?" Sun Lang glared at him. "I have great merits in sieges and field battles." "Do you?" "I have killed more sky demon than you have seen in your life." "Can you do it?" "I have experienced hundreds of battles and ruled the northern war zone." "I hold a martial scepter." "I have accumulated military merits and was promoted to the top of the world's military officials." "I can enter the imperial court without bowing." "Can you do it?" "You're just a talkative civil official. How dare you bark in front of me?" "Shut up and kneel." When Quanfu was so angry that his whole body trembled, he turned around and entered the crowd before kneeling down. On the other side, Feng Yongting was afraid that something would go wrong again, so he had already begun to read aloud. There was one advantage to the martial arts world. The experts all had their own surround sound system. Eunuch Feng's strong inner strength slowly sent out the clear words, and everyone could hear it clearly. Here is the Shinsei General Sun Lang. He is loyal to the country and can read the imperial decree. Unexpectedly, the emperor did not immediately reprimand Sun Lang. Instead, he praised Sun Lang, saying that he was able to step forward to support the crown prince in the face of fierce opposition from the entire court. He was truly an example of a loyal official. The emperor was very happy, and then he heavily rewarded Sun Lang. As for the rewards, they were just gold, silver, jewels, silk, and satin. They were not worth mentioning. However, the key point was that, after the carrot, in the second half of the imperial decree, the emperor turned the tip of his pen and waved a big stick. "However, General, you raised your arms and gathered your officials to shout at the imperial city and speak rudely. Although you are sincere, you have violated the law. The country has its laws, and the family has its rules. Although there is a reason for this, important officials who break the law are punished the same as commoners. I cannot bear to do so, but the country has its own laws. Thinking of general sincerity, I hope you can understand my difficulties in governing. Therefore, I reward you first and punish you later. I have a clear distinction between the two sides." Amazing. If a popular phrase on Earth was used to describe the mood of the officials now, it would be that they were wildly cheering for the emperor. These words were really reasonable and convincing. "Don't you, Sun Lang, like to act? Then I will act with you. Don't you claim to be a loyal official? Then we will say that you are a loyal subject. We will praise you and reward you, but we will also punish you. You are loyal, but roaring in the imperial city is also against the laws of the country. After we praise you, we will hit you, and then we will put on an act. What can you say? Do you want to betray my sincere heart? Is it good to wear such a high hat?" It had to be said that the emperor was really shrewd. The official shouted at the imperial city and despised the etiquette of the monarch. According to the law, he should be flogged 30 times. However, how can a general of the imperial court and a hero of Tianyuan be humiliated like this? I cannot bear to do this. The country's laws cannot be abolished, and heroes cannot be humiliated. After weighing the two sides, I order the Shinsei General Sun Lang to be confined in the imperial prison for 3 days to reflect on his mistakes and serve as a warning to others. Thus, official Wen's kneeling body trembled slightly. Wonderful, wonderful. At first, when he heard that the emperor was not willing to flog him in public, he was a little disappointed. When he heard the punishment of confinement in the imperial prison for 3 days, he realized that the emperor was shrewd and ruthless. Today, the emperor had a great performance. He arranged Sun Lang clearly in public and showed the emperor's great kindness. Look, the emperor protected you in every way possible and even refused to flog you. At most, he would only confine you for 3 days. Aren't you touched? If you don't want to confine you, you are an ungrateful person who treats the emperor's good intentions as ill intent. If you obediently go to the imperial prison to reflect on your mistakes, haha, for 3 full days, you'll have to obediently accept the emperor's arrangements and moves. Otherwise, what can you do? You can escape from prison. Sun Lang stood where he was and did not say a word. Feng Yongting put away the imperial edict and walked forward. Looking at Sun Lang, there was no lack of blame in his eyes that said, "It's all your fault for jumping around like this. Now you're happy, right?" Out of duty, he still said, "General, please." This is His Majesty's heart of protection. Although the name of the celestial prison is not good for an important official like you, there's a special room for you. It is clean, tidy, and very comfortable. Sun Lang was silent for a moment and said lightly, "I feel wronged, but I won't say it. Since it is the Emperor's painstaking effort, I can only suffer a little more." When Quan Fu said sarcastically, "What, General? Are you not satisfied? Then say it." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "I am not satisfied. I am dedicated to the country and am upright. Unexpectedly, I have to be humiliated by a subordinate. There must be a villain behind this. But the Emperor's painstaking effort. Forget it, forget it." He sighed and said, "Your Highness, take care. Sun Lang has passed away." This sigh was full of helplessness and bleakness. General Shansei, who was dedicated to the country and suffered all kinds of grievances, chose to focus on the big picture this time. He would rather suffer than make things difficult for the Emperor. The general's henchman said excitedly, Marshal, you can't. We are not satisfied." "Shut up," Sun Lang said sternly. "His Majesty's Imperial Grace is vast and mighty. What right do you have to speak? You are Sun Lang soldiers, so don't make a fuss." Android and the others beat their chests and stamped their feet. "Marshal," Feng Yongting shivered. These people's acting was too stiff. He was afraid that Sun Lang would do something again and quickly said, "Take the general and leave." A few of the eunuchs stepped forward with cold faces, but a trace of excitement flashed in their eyes. What General Shun say? Now he had to obediently submit. Where was the spirit he had when he rebelled in the imperial court? They secretly gathered internal strength in their hands and grabbed Sun Lang's shoulders. They grinned and said, "General, please." Before they could finish, there were 3 muffled bangs. 3 of the eunuchs spat out blood and were thrown out like cannonballs. They rolled on the ground and struggled, but could not get up. Everyone was shocked. The guards subconsciously pulled out their swords. When Quan Fu shouted, "Are you going to defy the imperial edict?" "Idiot," Sun Lang said coldly. "I am not going to prison because I am giving face to His Majesty. I'm not going to be humiliated by scoundrels. If you don't know what civilized law enforcement is, then I will teach you a lesson." He shouted at the remaining eunuchs. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take me to the prison." The eunuchs looked at each other and then at their companions who were lying on the ground vomiting blood. They shook their heads like rattles. Who would dare to court death? Feng Yongting saw this helplessly and stepped forward. "What, do I have to kneel and ask you to go?" Sun Lang laughed. "That's not necessary. Let's go." He turned around with his hands behind his back. However, he hooked his hands behind his back, indicating that they should follow him. Shen's generals understood and immediately shouted, let's go, let's go. If the official dares to humiliate the marshal, we will chop off his dog head and chop him into minced meat." Feng Yongting was annoyed. "Why are you following us?" Android shouted. "The main road leads to the sky. You can go wherever you want. The prison is a forbidden area, but is the prison gate also a forbidden area? We will walk around and familiarize ourselves with the roads so that we could deliver food to the general in the future." Feng Yongting was helpless and urged, let's go, let's go." Sun Lang took the lead, and Feng Yongting followed behind him to lead the way. And Zhua and the others followed behind him, shouting and cheering. They pulled and dragged a group of people along to watch the show. His Highness the Crown Prince hesitated for a moment before he also brought some people along. If he stayed behind, an imperial father took the opportunity to summon him. What should he say? He would hide for as long as he could. The group of people passed through the streets and alleys and arrived near the prison. The prison warden received the news and came out to welcome them. We saw a group of court officials. He was shocked. However, when he took a closer look, he recognized that the leader was the Shin's General Sun Lang. His whole body went limp. "Hello, I'm here to squat," Sun Lang said very politely. Then, he glanced at the gates of the prison and the tight walls. He sighed. To think that I, Sun Lang, have been a hero for my entire life. To think that I would become a prisoner like this. The heavens are unfair. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden rumbling sound. The ground shook violently as if an earth dragon had turned over. Everyone suddenly felt the ground under their feet start to shake violently. Then, a series of deafening sounds were heard. Under the shocked gazes of the people, the prison gate collapsed with a loud bang. Android was the cleverest. He shouted, "This is a warning from the heavens. The marshal is a loyal subject. Even the heavens can't bear to see him being thrown into the prison." Feng Yongting came back to his senses and said angrily, "Sun Lang, what the hell are you doing?" Sun Lang stared at him and said, "I'm shocked. This geomagnetic vibration and earth dragon turning over, if it's not a warning from the heavens, then it's a disturbance from the earth element imperial army. As everyone knows, I'm the fire sword saint appointed by the late emperor. If I were to cause trouble, the heavens would rain fire and the earth would be scorched. How could it cause an earthquake? Don't accuse me for no reason and put all the blame on me. If you talk nonsense again, I'll beat you up." Eunuch Feng was tongue-tied. When he was about to say something, he heard Sun Lang sighing again. Fine. You're biased and have to suspect me. I can't do anything about it. I can only try to defend myself. In order to prove that the earthquake was not caused by me, I can only help to solve the case and find a suspect for you. This person has a grudge with me, and we had a conflict recently. Furthermore, he has earth element spiritual energy that can shake the earth. All these factors combined made me think of a person. He turned around and showed a kind smile. Come. Everyone come closer. I'll tell everyone what that person did last night. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.